I had to wait for that green light, that little green light. That's why the hesitation was present. So, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the August 4th, 2014 meeting of the Edina City Council and the Edina Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Roll call, please, Ms. Mangan.
Member Bennett? Here. Member Brindle?
Here.
Member Sprague?
Here.
Member Swenson?
Here.
Mayor Hovland?
Here. We have a form of meeting agenda in front of us, and I think there is, based on our work session, there's an inclination to remove one of the items from the agenda.
I would move 8C off the agenda and wait for an update on it, so we won't put it to day certain.
All right.
And then I would move the rest of the agenda.
I'll second.
We got a motion and a second to approve the form of meeting agenda excluding 8C, which is a matter related to the Human Rights and Relations Commission, a plan that they are working on for us. All right, any further discussion there? All those in favor of the agenda as stated, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried. Next, we have 15 items on the consent agenda. Is there anyone that wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda on council? Member Swenson.
I have a question on 4M that was on our dais. Does that change something that was in the packet?
No, it's tense. It's verb tense.
Oh, verb tense.
Some
Okay.
grammaticals, right?
Okay. Then I only need to pull off O. And then I would
All right.
move the rest of the consent
I
agenda.
was looking at some of my items here. All right, we got a motion and
Are
a
you-
second to approve the consent agenda with the exception of 4O. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. And now on to 4O. Member Swenson.
My only question is, I know we made a change based on Abby's hope for the drains in swimming pools, and is that embodied in this specifically?
I'm going to ask Jeff Brown. We happen to have Jeff here tonight. He's actually working the health commission next door. But Jeff, could you answer that question for us?
Sure. That won't change anything associated with the Abbey Sold law.
But it supports it, and it requests it, that what we did to make the drains at the bottom of pools safer for kids.
Right. That what is in existence now will continue to be.
Okay, then I would move this issue.
Second.
A motion and a second on 4O. Any further discussion? All those in favor of adopting 4O say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Thank you. Now we're on to the special recognitions and presentations portion of the agenda. And we have the green machine with us tonight, which is wonderful to see. I'm going to have them all come up, and looks like they've got some. Do you want to have your speakers come up first? I guess. All right, let's do it that way, and we'll recognize all of you afterwards. And please give us your name and what year you are in school and your home address, please.
My name is Peter Hartnett. I open and enroll in the Edina Public Schools. I live at 5547 Richmond Curve in Minneapolis, and I'll be a senior at the high school.
Thanks, Peter.
My name is Rebecca Earl. I live at 5161 Abercrombie Drive, and I am a 2014 graduate of Edina High School.
And my name's Erica Ding. I'm going to be a senior at the high school, and I live at 5810 Schaefer Road.
Go ahead with your presentation.
So first off, thank you for giving us the opportunity to come here and share with you our success from our 9th season as a team. We had a great season starting in the fall with many community outreach events where we continue to be STEM leaders in our community. This year's game, released in January for the robots to play, focused on how well each team could work with other teams to get basically a 2-foot exercise ball into 10-foot goals at either end of the playing field. So at our first competition in Duluth in March, we were quarterfinalists and then were awarded the Chairman's Award for community leadership and commitment to STEM, which secured our spot at World Championships. Then at our second regional, we were at the U of M, and we led an alliance that lost in the final match of the competition, so we were finalists. In April, we went to St. Louis for World Championships, where we competed with 400 other teams from around the globe, and we placed 35th out of the 100 in our division. Then in May, we went to the Minnesota State High School League State Championships for robotics, where we placed third, and the trophy from that can be seen in the high school trophy case. So that's a little recap of our robot season. Now we'd like to present to you a summary of basically what we talked about when we went to Washington, D.C. to talk with representatives and senators from our state earlier
Good.
this year.
Thanks, Erica. A very successful season. Go ahead, Rebecca.
Many teams work hard to spread the message of FIRST, but the Green Machine is the foundation of FIRST in Minnesota.
The Green Machine is the oldest enduring FRC team in Minnesota. Since the team's foundation in 2005, our students and mentors have helped build and expand the impact of FIRST. This fall marks the beginning of our 10th year as a FIRST robotics team.
We are committed to keeping the foundation of FIRST in Minnesota strong. We devote our resources, talent, and time to creating new STEM events in our community and state, as well as encouraging and empowering younger teams to support established events.
In the last 5 years alone, Team 1816 has originated and coordinated over 88 unique STEM outreach events.
We established Minnesota Splash, the state's largest FIRST training event, and the first Minneapolis kickoff. This year we coached Go First, the University of Minnesota's first alumni program, to take leadership of these successful events.
This allows us to focus on new STEM events like our STEM Career Night. This community event puts our team's STEM mentors and their career in the spotlight at our own high school. Dr. Bruce Locklear was so impressed by its debut last year that he's working with us to greatly expand it for this coming fall. We also invented Robot Day at the Minnesota Children's Museum, introducing little kids to Junior First Lego League and First Lego League.
One of our team members wrote a curriculum for a Lego robotics camp for English language learners and minority students in Edina, and we have worked with Best Buy and Geek Squad, who have adopted our curriculum to expand their summer engineering camps to 26 cities nationally, including one in July at the Minneapolis Public Library.
So in addition to that, we brought this curriculum to People Serving People and the Kids Clubs of Washington County in Woodbury, which will introduce these kids to FIRST teams in their schools, wherever that may be, kind of creating a home away from home in FIRST.
In addition to outreach events, we model FIRST emphasis on character and community by carrying out service projects. From park cleanups with our sponsor Dow, to food drives, summer camps, and activities at local schools, we give back to our community in the spirit of FIRST. In the past 5 years, we have performed more than 6,000 hours of community service.
The Green Machine also emphasizes building partnerships with other teams. We have started and mentored 22 teams in Minnesota, and these teams are still going strong. Our mentorship knows no borders. We have mentored teams as far away as New York, Mexico, and Israel.
So back at home, our overall goal is to create and sustain a path for students interested in STEM disciplines, whether they join us in FLL, First Lego League in the elementary schools, or Junior FLL even, or First Tech Challenge in 7th grade, or First Robotics Competition in 10th grade.
So these were just a few of the things that we discussed when we traveled to Washington, D.C. for the second time in partnership with a team from Michigan. In addition to advocating education, STEM, and FIRST, we arranged private meetings with our representatives and senators to make sure that education remains a top priority.
In the meeting with Congressman Ellison, we talked about the value of general education and STEM education today. In this meeting, he thanked Edina and Mayor Hovland for the great working relation he has with Edina. He looks forward to more collaboration with the city. With Congressman Paulson, we discussed general education and the importance of local and school boards. In our meetings with Senator Klobuchar and Franken, we talked about the growing need and importance of STEM education in the state.
FIRST is about more than building robots. FIRST and the Green Machine build character, confidence, courage, and community. The Green Machine is proud to be the first resource in Minnesota.
So we are Team 1816, the Green Machine. As you can see, FIRST gives us unique opportunities to reach out to people and make them a part of the leading edge technology of today. And we work hard to inspire them to collectively shape our tomorrow.
Well, thank you very much. Well, I think we should give you a round of applause for the wonderful season that you had in your presentation here. Rebecca, you got a few weeks until college. Where are you heading for?
I'm going to attend the University of Minnesota at Twin Cities.
All right, good. Do they want a photo of the team up here with the council? Yeah, come on up, everybody. Council want to come down? Get your picture with the Green Machine. Come on up here. All right. In front of the dais. Good, thanks, congratulations.
Before you go,
The
though,
audience that may not have heard the data point before, there are no more robotics teams in Minnesota than hockey teams.
before you go, I have to tell you, my son is one of your greatest fans. He's 8 years old and can't wait to participate in the first Lego League. He'll be a real player. But also, you've been represented at outside events. I just want to show this picture from a polar plunge 2 years ago, and you may recognize the headband right there. That's Green Machine in effect, so keep up the good work.
Thanks, Rebecca. Thanks, Rebecca.
Thank you much. Congratulations.
All right, we've got two public hearing matters before us this evening, and the first one involves a proposed comprehensive plan amendment, preliminary rezoning, and preliminary development plan for a piece of real estate on 5108 Industrial Boulevard, 7700 Normandale Boulevard. Director Teague will start the matter out, and then we'll have a presentation from the developer.
Okay, thank you, Mayor, members of the council. This is a site that you're familiar with as we've taken a look at a couple of sketch plans. Property is located down in the northwest or southwest corner of the city, just north of 494, west of Highway 100, the intersection of Metro Boulevard and Industrial Boulevard. Property is highlighted in blue here. It's zone planned office district. That's the orange parcels here. The yellowish parcels, that's our industrial park. And you might note that these properties to the south across Edina Industrial Boulevard, those are zone PCD2, which is a neighborhood commercial type zoning district. The site that we're looking at is guided in our comprehensive plan for office, and those sites to the south are guided industrial. It was an oversight in the comprehensive plan back in 2008. So as part of this project, the applicant is requesting a comprehensive plan amendment from office to neighborhood commercial, and it was staff's recommendation that we also incorporate those sites to the south for neighborhood commercial as well. So this is the site that we're looking at, an existing office building, and to the south is a retail strip center. It's where the Cheetah Pizza, Eddington's, is located. There's a Burger King to the south, the Shell gas station, and the Dairy Queen. So the existing site today, there's a little over 12,000 square foot office building on the site. The applicant is proposing to tear that building down and build a new 10,000 square foot retail center. It would include a coffee shop on one side with a drive-through. So this is a two-step development process. This first step before the council requires 4 votes this evening, and that's due to the comprehensive plan amendments. So it's to re-guide both that site, the existing site that we're looking at, from office to neighborhood commercial, and then those commercial sites to the south from industrial to neighborhood commercial as well. Also preliminary zoning from POD 1 to PCD 2, and then a preliminary development plan. If the council approves those tonight, they would then move to the second step, which would be final rezoning to PCD 2. We're also at that stage would be looking at final development plan and front yard setback variances. There, as we'll take a look at in a second here, they'll be shifting the building up toward the street. So this is a look at the sketch plan that the council considered a few months back. You may recall it was 2 buildings at that time, essentially in the center of the property with parking and drive aisles all around. So the applicant listened to the city council and have pulled the building up to the street. So the variances that they would be requesting would be for a 30-foot setback here and 25 on the Metro Boulevard side. You see there were some concerns with the drive-through circulation coming around the building. They think they've satisfied that with the drive-through window. The order menu board would be located right here with the pickup window and out, so much easier access in and out of the drive-through. In regard to the existing circulation, you may recall there is a drive entrance roughly in this location here. That would be eliminated, so they would just have 2 entrances to the site, one on each road. A traffic study was done by Wenck and Associates, and their conclusion was that the existing roadway could support this project. A representative from Wenck is here this evening to answer any questions that you might have. In regard to landscaping, based on the perimeter of the site, 25 overstory trees are required. The proposal here is for 27. When the Planning Commission reviewed this, they did have some concerns with the landscaping, and they suggested potentially to consider boulevard trees, especially along Edina Industrial Boulevard. So again, that would be something looked at as part of the second stage of development here. I mentioned the drive-through stacking. There would be stacking space for 6 cars beyond the menu board and 9 from the pickup window. That would be code compliant. The building itself would be brick on all sides with ledge stone. We'll just quickly move through some of the graphics here. Again, this is the first stage of the project, so at the second stage they would bring in the materials board for the council to look at. There is a trash area in the northeast corner that would be brick to match the building. It would be in this location right here, so that would be code compliant. And again, the setbacks that we would consider variances should they move through this first phase of development. So the primary issue that the Planning Commission and staff looked at is the comprehensive plan amendment to neighborhood commercial for this site and area. Is that appropriate? And is the PCD2 zoning appropriate? Both staff and Planning Commission believe that both of these are. The proposed use with the neighborhood commercial type retail is consistent with the properties to the south, as I mentioned earlier. The re-guiding of this site to neighborhood commercial is really a housekeeping item to bring the site into conformance with the comprehensive plan. Neighborhood commercial is defined as small neighborhood scale commercial to serve the adjacent neighborhood, which is what this area does for the industrial park. The PCD2 zoning proposed for the subject site is consistent with the zoning to the south. So with that, staff is recommending approval subject to the findings and conditions that are outlined in the Planning Commission staff report and the resolution that's before you. I want to highlight a couple of things that the Planning Commission added conditions to. I did mention the landscaping along the street. And the second is they had some concern with the setback toward Edina Industrial Boulevard and thought maybe as proposed it's a little bit close to the street. So they suggested considering moving it back. As you see, this area in here would be patio sidewalk space. So the thought being if you could move that back a little bit and still not impact the parking field here. So that was recommended by the Planning Commission. So with that, I can stand for any questions the council may have.
Just a clarification, does this site plan reflect that shift back, or is this still the plan that involves a request for the setback variances?
This still is that plan. The applicant has a plan this evening that they will show you that may shift that back a little bit.
All right, thank you. Member Sprague.
So within the 30-foot setback in front, what are they proposing for the sidewalk and the boulevard to the street?
Yeah, the sidewalk.
It's a 5-foot sidewalk.
Yeah, would be proposed.
And what's the boulevard? Is that approximate?
I don't see it measured out.
Yeah, 10, 12 feet would be the boulevard. I can put it to a scale in a minute and give you that number if you'd like.
Thank you.
Other questions for Director Teague at this point in time? Otherwise, we'll bring the proponent up. And would the proponents please come up? why don't you take in the range of 10 to 15 minutes for your proposal, no more than 15.
Great, good evening, Mayor.
Good evening.
City Council, I'm Dave Anderson. I'm with Frauenschuh Incorporated, 7101 West 78th Street. We are the owner of the property. And tonight we'll make some comments. I think largely Mr. Teague covered the discussion at the Planning Commission and how this plan has evolved. We think it does a great job responding to some of the street interaction with the street, creating that more scaled pedestrian environment. And so we'll share a few additional details about that in a few moments with some images. But really from the standpoint of good circulation, good access for customers, good access for tenants and employees, we think the site plan really reflects here a good solid project that's getting very good response in the market. So to the point on landscaping, and Mr. Spirides in a moment can touch on some of that, we do want to be conscious, because this is a building brought up to the street, that we don't create landscaping that conflicts with signage. It is a retail environment, so signage is of particular interest to the tenants, and we'll just have to be careful and thoughtful in that design. So we do intend to bring trees and other excellent landscaping solutions to this plan that will be developed, but those are some of our concerns about particularly boulevard trees in front of the building, just that they don't grow to basically block out an entire sign. So we'll be thoughtful about that. Mr. Mayor and Council, I think I'll invite Nick Spirides to speak to some of the building adjustments, and he'll have a couple of visuals here tonight.
All right, thanks, Mr. Anderson. Mr. Spirides?
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, Council. Always a pleasure to be here. We've gone through this.
Give us your name and business
address.
address.
Oh, certainly. Nick Spirides, Spirides Reiners Architects, Bloomington, Minnesota. The process of the sketch plan review, which we've been through 2 times with you, and believe it was a very, very beneficial process to this site, moving that building up towards the street, creating circulation, making a more pedestrian-friendly site. And you can see we've made some adjustments on this plan. I don't know if I can move these over or not. The building, as we've submitted it, the Planning Commission suggested perhaps finding some common ground where we could move the building a touch north to create a little more space between the sidewalks and the building so it wasn't so crammed, and also to allow for pedestrian movement directly into the tenants or onto the tenant patios, as you can see here. One of the other suggestions was perhaps a small public area, which is located in the center of the building. Let's see if I can call up this plan, which shows that off of the sidewalk, to create a little feature area where it's not a particular tenant's patio space, but pedestrians could certainly utilize a little seating area, some landscaping, buffering the sidewalk from this seating area. The wall directly behind the seating area, and I'll show another graphic here, the intent is to, in the center of the building, create a wall behind the glass so that, in fact, we can put some art, some color, some light to create a feature of some kind. And as you can see in this rendering, which is different from the other renderings we showed you, the corner developments with patios, umbrellas, so hopefully to create more pedestrian friendly. And by just moving the building simply a couple of feet to the north, we found that common ground to give ourselves a little space. Councilmember Sprague, to answer your question about the trees in the boulevard, there is an easement that does exist along Edina Industrial Boulevard. It's not shown on this little sketch here. That we're going to work together with Mr. Teague to see what that easement, but it was planned for a turn lane, so trees on the south side of the sidewalk may not in fact work because it's in an easement area. So we'll work through that in our site plan approval process.
I actually wasn't talking about trees. I was talking about the spatial relationship, the size of the sidewalk, the size of the boulevard, and then also what goes in the boulevard. And there's some examples where the sidewalk undulates. It's not such a straight path. It makes it a little more interesting environment, as well as not just overstory trees, but perennials, rocks. And if you look at the shopping center where Whole Foods is, you'll see an example, a point of reference to what a possible streetscape will look like that's a little more interesting to walk through as a pedestrian.
Okay. And perhaps this area that we've developed here in concept in response to the Planning Commission could in fact do that, where the sidewalk doesn't just run straight, it can curve into that public area. So those are the improvements that we're contemplating after our meeting with the Planning Commission, and I'm here for questions if you have any.
I think, Mr. Spreedy, the other question Member Sprague had was the width of the boulevard.
Yeah, I believe Mr. Teague is correct.
Back to the sidewalk.
I believe it's about 12 feet. I don't have that dimension specifically, but the sidewalk is about 5 feet, and I believe there's about a 12-foot space to the curb from the sidewalk.
I did scale it off, and it is 12 feet.
Yeah.
Thank you. Council questions, comments? Anyone? Let me look at my... Go ahead.
My question actually is for Director Teague. I listened to the discussion today, and it does appear that there could be plantings in the easement area. The long-term use isn't certain whether or not there would be a turn lane. And I understand the desire to preserve visual to signage. But I think what I heard the planning commissioners say is that for pedestrians to feel safe from the roadway, that wide boulevard is part of the appeal or part of the physical perception. Also, some mature trees by Point of France, the corner that Point of France sits on is a particularly good example, understanding that that's dealing with different setbacks. I think here you've worked the dimensions really, really well, and I think the design is just an enormous improvement over what you had before, which was solid, but it was the kind of typical with the parking all around. To have concentrated the parking as you've done, add that green space with the green island, whether it actually functions as a rain garden or as sort of a piece of public living art, I think you've ended up with a much better project. But I would like to see some exploration, however we have to word it, of some trees on that boulevard, because it will draw people. If they have an enjoyable walk, they will come, they will see the sidewalk and patio use, and I think it'll attract a different, more customers.
We also have to be cognizant, as you know, of snow removal and street, so too close to the boulevard may in fact be harder with the snow removal, so we just have to, we're at that point now where we need to consider all those. And we've planted more trees than are required by code on our site plan, so we're doing what we can.
Member Swenson?
Since Member Brindle has laryngitis, I'm going to take over two of her topics that she always has. One, I noticed on one of your plans you did show bike racks. Was that in the upper or western, northwestern corner? Is that, did you? Yeah. And then she and I would always like to know is how are you taking in and out trash and making deliveries to this property?
All of the deliveries would come in from the parking lot side of the building. Obviously, trash is located, I don't have that site plan up. Carrie, is there a, let's see here. Here, we'll go to the site plan here.
I didn't see it on the site plan, but maybe I missed it.
It's not on this particular site plan, but adjacent to this tree in the northeast corner, there are 2 parking stalls that we will take, and we've just done an analysis with the tenants to size that trash enclosure properly. And obviously, we've got dimensions that accommodate trash removal. And I believe that the tenants don't want the trash removal during their business hours, so we'll work together to make that work.
And that is in a space that you're counting for your 55 parking spots, are you?
Yes, well, those 2 were on this plan, and we pulled back the parking here. We'll pick up that extra spot that we lost.
Okay.
Yes.
And then I noticed you have a variety of proposed uses, from sandwiches to coffee to service to salon. All those things kind of need different parking. So while you provide 55 or 56, I know that we've had problems with the site across the highway from you because all of a sudden it got a lot of food in there and they have a parking issue. So what happens here?
Any use that would move in there is reviewed on a case-by-case basis, similar to the one across the road, where they've maxed it out over there, and
They
No,
overmaxed it, actually.
You're right.
We went through our whole proof of parking in the back, and they still don't have enough parking.
Right. Yeah, at the
So
noon
how do
hour,
we
there's
prevent
maybe
that?
a space or two. Well, they're code compliant there at that site, believe it or
Okay.
not. But so
So
it
you
would
can
be
be
a
code compliant and not workable. Okay, that's my only concern, because there isn't a whole lot of alternatives. There isn't on-street parking. There isn't, you're on a busy road.
The only thing I can add to the, question or an answer potentially is that the attempt in this particular location has been to accommodate a lot of pedestrian traffic from the surrounding businesses. So parking hopefully won't be a problem based on the code. We've met the code, and we've tried to accommodate as much pedestrian inflow as possible.
We looked at a sketch review plan for the site next to you, and they had a parking issue. And one of the discussions that we had was, would we ever, on a proof of parking, decide to use like the drive-through that would be proof of parking, not a drive-through, which obviously would be a problem for you because you have a tenant, I'm sure, that would like that drive-through. But that's really the only space that has any additional area. So, Carrie, is that?
I think they were also going to, the other entity that we saw at sketch plan review was talking to the Buddhist temple.
And they were going to share space
Share
as long as
space.
that stayed a Buddhist temple and they could share space, but.
Or the Hindu temple.
Hindu temple,
Excuse
okay.
me.
Sorry, you're
Hindu
right, Hindu
temple.
temple. I know we've just never done it before, but I was just trying to think creatively, how do we make sure, I hate to overpark stuff because I hate empty parking lots, but.
and with that space to the east, they were short parked compared to code, whereas this site, code-wise, does have enough.
Okay.
But the area in the southeast corner, where you see the tree there, they could add a couple of spaces there, but it's not going to provide
Well, and the
a
trouble
lot
is
of
that's a
extra.
couple spaces as you're pulling in off of a busy street, so.
That's right.
Those to me are not optimum spaces. It would be way better if the tree could stay there because I wouldn't want to park there and try to pull out of there.
All right, Member Brindle.
All right, I'll be brief for obvious reasons. On page A20, there's a depiction of the 5 tenant spaces. And in tenant space C, you've got a bathroom with 2 toilets listed there. Is that the toilet space for the whole building, or are those public toilets? What are those?
Those 3 interior tenant spaces will be sharing those 2 toilets, a men's and a women's toilet room. By code, they wouldn't be required. The assumptions we've made with those tenants at this point is that they would be compliant using shared
Okay,
toilets.
oh, I see.
And the 2
So tenants
outboard-
B, C, and D
Exactly.
would
So-
be sharing those 2 bathrooms?
Correct. And then
Okay, and then A and E would have their own?
would have their own by code.
Okay, great. And then 2 other things. The first time you were here, I was, as I always am, critical of mechanics on the roof, the boxes of things on the roof. And they always have to be there, but they're unsightly, and they become particularly unsightly as we have more height in our city. So thinking about the possibility that a 4-story building could be built next door, what are they going to see when they look over at this building?
I'm sorry, which site? Are you, the adjacent site to the east?
Well, I don't care. Any adjacent site where they can see the top of the roof.
They'd see roof mechanical equipment if they're up that high, for sure.
Okay. Then that's my sensitivity to it. Because right now, while the design has come forward, what we really have is a box with some things on the corners to decorate the corners. And I appreciate that, but from a varied height standpoint, we continue to have a challenge. So that knowing that height is in our future, it's part of who we are because we don't have any more land area. It is something I'm sensitive to. So that's something to consider. I don't have a solution, and I'm not expecting one in 5 minutes, but it is a concern. The only other thing I have is the right-of-way, off-street right-of-way for pedestrians and cyclists to get from one place to another. Now, clearly, they've got sidewalks along the road. But if you're walking from one building to another, you might walk through a parking lot, cut over a curb, and then you walk through, cut over a curb. And I'd like to have this property be sensitive to that and be welcoming to that. Because I think if you've got a coffee shop in here, if you've got a sandwich shop in here that people are going to want to come to and meet at, it might be nice for them to have not a sidewalk walk, but a little circuitous walk through a parking lot to get there. So off-street right-of-way is something I like very much. Thanks.
As a segue to Member Brindle's question, what will pedestrians see in the way of rooftop mechanicals?
Carrie, how do we get to the image again? Here we go.
And if they'll see something, is there some way to at least try to deal with that?
Our goal was to build a parapet edge on the building of varied heights so we create some interest, not to just have one standard height, and to utilize those areas as the placement for the mechanicals behind those elements as best we can. As far as hiding them from a building that's 3 stories taller, I don't even have an answer for that at this point. It's something we'll have to just think about. But that is our plan, to use those elements not only as architecture from the ground, but as screening device instead of putting up a fence.
This is either for you, Mr. Spreedes, or for Director Teague. With respect to your notion of moving the building slightly back from the street, what is that going to mean in terms of front yard setback variance requests? We were at 35 feet from a code standpoint and going to 30 and 25 feet. Do we have to deal with this issue with particularity? Do we know what those variance requests will be based upon the modification?
You don't need to this evening. That would be...
Just in final?
That would be at final, right. It could be code compliant if they chose to move it back 5 feet. It doesn't sound like they want to go quite that far back, so there may be a variance request still.
I've got some empathy for you on the notion that we seem to have, it's consistent between the council and the planning commission, and that is we like to have the buildings moved up, engage the street, we call it that term, and no one knows what it means. So we ask you to engage the street and you move the building closer to the street, and then we say, whoa, wait a minute, you're too close to the street. Yeah, move the building back a little bit. So thank you for trying to work on that issue and make it work a little bit better and still accomplish generally what we all want to try to accomplish.
It is not an unusual problem in many of the cities we present in. So as long as when you move it towards the street that we identify and make sure that we don't still have the same utilities. There's some examples in Bloomington where I live where the buildings were pulled up close to the street, but the gas meters are still on the side of the building adjacent to the pedestrian way. So we have to be careful in a suburban environment when we create urban buildings to be sensitive to that.
All right, good. All right. Any other questions for Mr. Anderson or Mr. Sprees? Member Sprague.
Thank you. That corner is a good candidate for a curb extension, Metro and Edina Industrial Boulevard for a pedestrian landing. It's something we're doing on France to create a better connection, a safer connection. Is there, engineer, Milner, is there anything that is contemplated there that we can do to make that a safer crossing, since we're inviting people into that area generally?
Well, we are putting sidewalks along both sides of it with a pedestrian ramp, and then we got the push buttons, but to extend those curbs, there'd be issue with the industrial park area, so it's all the semi trucks trying to get to make that north turn from westbound.
So it's a turning radius issue.
There's already an issue with the bollards in that corner. They get run over. We have bollards to protect the traffic signal.
Because long trucks.
All right. Thanks.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Spreedes. Thanks, Mr. Anderson. This is a public hearing. I'm going to open this up for public testimony or inquiry. Anyone who comes forward, keep in mind that your time limit will be 3 minutes, and you'll get a green light, and then when you've got 30 seconds left, you'll get a yellow light, and that should forewarn you to be prepared to wrap up your comments when the red light hits so that you're finished with your comments to the council. And please give us your name and address when you come up. I think one of the side podiums would be best, unless you have an overhead that you want to use, and then you can use the center podium, and it will give you a handheld microphone. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to come forward and testify regarding this matter? All right, it looks like a repeat of the Planning Commission where no one testified.
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Discussion, all those in favor of closing the public hearing, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say nay. Carried.
I'll move the comprehensive plan amendment.
All right.
Second.
All right, we got a motion and a second on the comprehensive plan amendment, which requires a 4/5 vote. And any further discussion on that matter? All right, roll call, please.
Member Brindle.
Aye.
Member Sprague. Aye. Member Swenson.
Aye.
Member Bennett.
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye.
And question, Your Honor.
Yes.
Did that include the additional parcels as requested by staff?
It did.
Yeah.
It embodied in that resolution are those addition. I think it's in 1.03. Those other properties.
Housekeeping, as it was done.
Good point. And then we have one other resolution, 2014-83, which approves preliminary rezoning from POD 1 Planned Office District to PCD 2. Do we have a motion on that?
Second.
Got a motion and a second on that particular matter. All right, discussion. This is a roll call vote, affirmative vote of 3 of the council members required here.
Member Sprague.
Aye.
Member Swenson.
Aye.
Member Bennett.
Aye.
Member Brindle.
Aye.
Mayor Hovland.
Aye. And I think that is it for the resolutions related to that particular matter. So we've got things approved on a preliminary basis. We have one more step to go through on final. And we'll expect to see you sometime in the near future. Thank you. And then we have one other public hearing this evening, and that involves a final site plan review. There's some variance requests and a preliminary plat. Masaba Capital is the applicant and involves the property at 7151 York Avenue South. And Director Teague again has this matter.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the council. Another site that you're familiar with through sketch plan review. This is located down in the southeast portion of the city, north of the YMCA on York Avenue. The site is highlighted on the screen. It's currently zoned for senior residential. Directly to the west is commercial property with high-density residential to the south. The site today, there is a 12-story senior housing building, 264 units, 12 stories, located on the site. Excuse me. What the applicant is proposing here is to build a 100-unit senior housing project with 70 units with housing with services and 30 memory care units. 10% of the units would be affordable. Again, similar to the sketch plan review. The building would be located on the York side of the existing building. I'll just quickly move through some of the renderings. So the connection between the two. You recall at the sketch plan, the council had suggested a physical connection between the two buildings. They are proposing sidewalk connections with porte-cochere type barrier over the sidewalk. This is the loading area into the underground parking garage for the new building. Look from York. Another look between the two buildings. This is a look at the sketch plan that was considered by Council and Planning Commission. You might note there was a 45-foot setback suggested at that time. They were encouraged to pull the building up to the street, which is proposed this evening. There was a suggestion to reduce some of the parking and provide some green space, which they have done. provide pedestrian connections, and tie the two buildings in architecturally. So this is a look at the site plan as it's proposed before you. They have moved it up to a 20-foot setback, so variance is requested. And they've turned some of that parking space into green space along here, and along the north line they've added additional green space. So to accommodate this request, there's a number of requirements, applications being requested. First, the site plan review to construct the new 4-story building. Front yard setback variance from 46 to 20 feet. The 46-foot requirement is based on the building height. A density variance to allow 364 total units on the site from 182, which would be allowed under the current zoning. The existing building is non-conforming with 264 units. A parking variance from 194 exposed spaces required by code and 91 enclosed to 162 exposed and 64 enclosed. The existing building doesn't provide any underground parking. Well, there are a few stalls underneath, but the building proposed tonight would be code compliant if it stood on its own in terms of underground parking. Also, variances are requested to allow 1-bedroom units that are under 500 square feet in size and 2-bedroom units over 850 square feet. There's also a preliminary plat requested. The applicant's proposing to divide the property so the new building would sit on its own site. So in looking at the site plan, again, 2 access points off of York, the loading area around to the back, north side of the building. The proposed landscaping based on our code requirements, 63 perimeter trees are required. They are proposing 63 with a complement of understory trees. When the Planning Commission reviewed this, they did have some concerns with the landscaping and suggested additional plantings along the south lot line, along here in these open spaces, and potentially along the north. So that's a condition that's been added per the Planning Commission. WSB did a parking and traffic study. Chuck Rickard is here from WSB to answer any questions that you may have. But the study does conclude that the parking proposed would adequately serve both uses on the site, and the existing roadway system can support the property. It is noted in the report that a traffic signal is needed at Park Lawn and York by the year 2030. Whether this project is developed or not, that signal will be needed at that time. In terms of mechanical equipment, you note there is mechanical equipment as indicated here on the plans on the roof. Let's see, so in this location here, that was another concern of the Planning Commission, and they suggested a noise study be done and the potential for noise mitigation to be included on that. The applicant has since indicated that they may not need mechanical equipment on the roof, so they can address that as part of their presentation, but some of that mechanical equipment may be underground. There was also concern raised in regard to the turning radius movements into the underground parking. And the applicant has provided this slide that indicates the different types of vehicles that would move into that area, and it can be accommodated. First is the passenger van. Second, vehicle could make that turn no problem, a passenger car. For the large trucks, they would pull into the site and then back in, and then for exiting, they would simply drive around the site. So they've demonstrated that that loading area can work. There is an existing 30-foot utility easement along York. By pulling the building up for a 20-foot setback, a portion of that easement would need to be vacated. We're not entirely certain that there are no utilities within that easement. That would have to be investigated. So in moving that building up to a 20-foot setback, a utility easement vacation would be required. That's also a condition of approval. This graphic also demonstrates the proposed subdivision. So the new parcel would be split off from the south. There would be a requirement for shared parking and access easements between the two properties. Park dedication is also required as part of this. So the primary issue, are the variances for density, unit size, and front yard setback reasonable for the site? The Planning Commission, during their review, a motion to approve the project, the motion failed on a vote of 3-3. Some of the conditions that were suggested in that motion for approval have been incorporated into the resolution for consideration of the council this evening. But the main concern that the Planning Commission had was in regard to that front yard setback. They were thinking that moving it up to a 20-foot setback was a little too close, and they wanted to see the building shifted back. There was also some discussion about the living streets and whether that would tie into some of the things that we're looking at with the living streets. The applicant has been in contact with engineering staff, Mark Nolan, and it was determined that as proposed, there would be adequate space to accommodate any of the living streets principles. The building itself would be set about 28 feet back from the curb, so that there would be adequate space in that regard. So in regard to the variance criteria, practical difficulty is the location of the existing building and trying to fit a new building onto the site. In shifting it back, green space potentially would be lost in between those two buildings. You could still shift that building back, however, and meet the setback. In regard to the unit size, the purpose of the minimum unit size is to provide affordable housing. And this is a site that does provide a good number of affordable housing units in Edina. The existing building is essentially all affordable. 263 of the units are considered affordable housing. And 10% of these new units are also affordable housing. So that goal is met with this project. And then to allow units over 850 square feet provides alternative housing or more options for Edina residents to move in. We didn't believe that by shifting the building up to the street would alter the essential character of the neighborhood. While in this neighborhood there's not a lot of buildings moved up to the street as of yet, but that is a goal of the comprehensive plan to move buildings up to the street. In regard to the criteria to allow greater density, the comprehensive plan allows for, this is an area in the comp plan that allows for some flexibility for providing dwelling units that exceed 30 units per acre, which this site would. The comprehensive plan states that to exceed 30 units per acre, the following circumstances are sought. Close proximity to hospitals, proximity to low-density uses, utilities capacity, level of service, transit service available, impact on adjacent roads. Other desired items to allow greater density for senior housing would include providing below-grade parking, provision of park or open space, providing affordable housing, providing sustainable design principles, and provision of public art. So with this project, the site is in general close proximity to the hospital. It is separated from the single-family homes in Richfield by the existing building. There is utility capacity to support the project. They are providing underground parking, and they are suggesting 10% of the affordable new units would be affordable, and they are suggesting sustainable design principles. So with that, staff is recommending approval, and again, some of the conditions that were suggested by the Planning Commission have been included in the resolution. And just to highlight a couple of them, the sidewall articulation was a concern. The applicant has submitted some revised plans to address that wall. They had suggested that this wall facing York be provide some articulation there. And what they've done, this was the plan that was reviewed by the Planning Commission. They've added a row of windows here. So you can see that additional window. And they have addressed the concern in the front, again, by speaking to engineering staff, and they are proposing a entrance into the building off of the sidewalk. in the front, and I'll let the applicant go into a little more detail on this graphic as well as part of their presentation. They have agreed to provide any upgrades to the bus stop that's located along York and work with staff and Metro Transit to accomplish that. Another condition that the Planning Commission suggested was to provide a statement of how they would meet our energy goal of over 10%, the state energy code. I've handed out a revised resolution that's before you. I incorporated all of the requests into one resolution. The resolution that was in your packet didn't include the preliminary plat conditions, so that would include the park dedication and the condition for the shared access agreements between the two. So with that, staff would recommend approval of the resolution that was handed out to the council this evening. And I can stand for questions.
In our correspondence part of our packet, we got a lot of correspondence from the existing building on the site. And one of the comments they make about parking is that, one, there would be less handicap stalls for them, and that they would, that they already use all the parking that there is existing today, so they would be short if they had 20 spaces less. So could you speak to that? I know we're not voting on their parking, but this changes their parking, so.
It does. They would be required to meet the ADA standards for parking, and I apologize, I didn't run that calculation as to whether they have provided enough.
Okay.
But as part of the building plan
But maybe they
review-
had them on both sides, and now they'll only have them on one.
Right.
So do we, while this might be parked with what we think it should be parked, you made the statement you didn't think it
I
was
don't
going to
know
be
off
short?
the top of my head whether they've provided enough ADA stalls. They may have to add some along the front here. It
Okay.
shouldn't change their overall parking numbers, but some of the stalls that aren't
Well,
designated
sometimes it does
ADA.
when you have to have the access to the door and have kind of the dead stall in between.
That's true.
No, I'm just concerned that we're not taking an existing parking lot that is fully utilized or more and making it smaller. That was all.
Is that parking lot full, though? I mean, they've got
Well-
underground parking. How many employees are there at one time?
Yeah, I don't know the detail. of
Okay,
the-
maybe
but
we'll.
They
But
have
the new-
they have something called 8 enclosed parking spaces. I'm not sure
Right.
what that means, but that was in the notes. They comment about not being able to go between buildings without going outside is a concern to them. So, I'm sure there's some people from that building here to speak tonight, so I'll wait till I hear from them.
If I could address the parking issue, they have submitted a proof of parking plan that shows where additional parking could be constructed if need be. So it would primarily be on the south side here. I did put a scale to this north side to see if additional parking spaces could be added up there as well. While you would lose this row of parking, there's 10 stalls there, and you'd lose some green space here. You could add parking along this green strip, so you could add 30 stalls up there. It would actually be 40, but you'd lose the 10 to the south.
Okay.
Thank you. As to parking, I think you'd have to do it on the south, just from having talked about this a little bit with the proponent in a meeting. But the trucks are going to need that turning space if that's where large trucks are going to enter in and then exit through. But looking at the new site and how it integrates with the building that is there currently. This is something that was talked about at the Planning Commission, and I guess I'd like to talk about it here as well, and that is how much movement for residents is anticipated from one building to the other? Are residents going to go and meet friends at the other building, at the new building, for example? And how often is that? Or I don't know what the interaction between the two buildings really is anticipated. And then as far as the new building having assisted living services, if someone in the current building, which is all independent, desires to have assisted living services, can those services come to them in the independent building, or would that cause a move to the assisted living building? So those are really my operational questions of how these buildings would interact.
And I'll let the applicant speak on the detail
Okay,
of how that
thanks.
might.
Any questions for Director Teague at this point? All right, I've got one. The density, a couple actually. The density variance would allow 364 total units on the site as a variance from 182 units allowed under the current zoning. Does that density variance take into effect the changes we made in the comprehensive plan recently with regard to dwelling units per acre numbers in that Southdale district?
Yeah, the recent changes that were made, actually this site, while the numbers changed up to a maximum of 30 units per acre, there is a provision in the comprehensive plan that allows the council for senior housing only to exceed that 30 units per acre. So it's kind of on a case-by-case basis. And some of the criteria that we look at would be, the location of hospitals, providing underground parking, proximity to metro transit, primarily for employees, providing affordable housing, providing sustainable design, so a lot of those things this project does meet to justify the greater density.
And so what's the units per acre number proposed?
64.
54?
64.
64. Okay. All right. Now, you're recommending approval of the site plan as a staff person, the variances and the preliminary plat. And so I'm wondering, why do you support the project when the Planning Commission had so much difficulty? What's happened?
Well, that was staff's recommendation to the Planning Commission, so that hasn't changed. And as I mentioned, the Planning Commission motion was made to approve. The main concern they had was that front setback. I got the impression that if the building were shifted back and there was more engagement to the street, that they may have been supportive for that. So it's not so much that they were against the project, but just had concern with that front yard setback.
Well, they did approve the site plan, as I recall.
They approved the preliminary plat.
Approval of the plat. Okay, thank you. So I'd still like to know from you, from a staff standpoint, why you're comfortable with the approval of the site plan and the variances. And of course, the Planning Commissioner voted to approve the preliminary plat.
Yeah, staff was comfortable with the way the project engaged the street. They're providing the sidewalk along the street. It allows for extra green space between the two buildings for use of both the existing and the proposed building. So staff didn't have any concern, assuming there's no utilities under that 30-foot utility easement that's there. Staff was comfortable with the variance and the site plan as proposed.
All right, thank you. Any other questions for Member Bennett?
Thank you. Director Teague, I heard also some questions about the density, some concerns expressed, and especially in light of other building activities going on in the area. And then I also heard a number of questions regarding what to Member Brindle's point, social interaction, but also what the possible move from one building would be. And it's my understanding that with 7500 York, the cooperative had actually a controlling vote on it. And in that instance, it was very clearly contemplated that residents, when they needed services, would move into York Gardens. In this instance, it was not completely clear, it was not crystal clear in the answers that were given during the Planning Commission consideration what the anticipated movement would be between buildings. And I guess I'm going to say what I heard, and you can tell me if I heard it correctly. It is that the buildings will have different management. They will, in essence, have different fee structures. If someone wants to try to move from the one building to the other, they would need to both find a unit available, but also, frankly, have the means to afford that unit at its price. There was a question from one commissioner as to what that price would be, and I believe that the answer was market rate. So we have seen that's whatever we know it to be at this time. Did I hear that correctly?
I believe you did hear that correctly. I didn't get the impression that there's quite as much working together with these two uses as there was at the 7,500 project, as an example.
And in fact, Ebenezer, I believe, is the management company for both 7,500
right.
York and York Gardens.
Right.
Okay, and then another question on that same theme is that the 10% of the units, or the 10 units that would be dedicated as affordable in the new building, if it's approved, those would be studios and one bedrooms, if I heard that correctly. Perhaps I can address that question to the applicant.
That is true.
Okay. And one of the variances sought is lesser square footage for studios. Is that studios only in memory care, or is that studios overall? Do you know?
Yeah, I don't believe the memory care was included. There were just a handful of units that were below the 500 square foot number.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Director Teague. All right, I'll bring the representatives from Mesaba Capital forward, and you'll have 15 minutes for your presentation.
I think we're going to use this. Good evening. My name is Della Colpine. I'm with Mesaba Capital Partners at 5201 Eden Avenue, Suite 250 in Edina, Minnesota. First of all, thank you this evening for allowing us to be here tonight, and for Kerry's presentation. We'll try to not duplicate some of the things that he covered, but hopefully we'll be able to answer many of the questions that were brought up this evening during the discussion. Along with myself tonight, I also have Elena Carter of RSP Architects. She'll be speaking more directly on the architecture. I also have Tim Getty of our management team. He's with Health Dimensions Group, and he'll be speaking on behalf of Health Dimensions Group and Premier Management. And I also have David Dye, who's with the new ownership and can speak to some of the questions, should you have any, on the Yorktown Continentals project. Before we go in, I just want to speak really that as we went about this project, that it really wasn't just Mesaba Capital alone really working on this. It really was a concerted effort on behalf of the architects, the existing ownership, the new ownership of Yorktown Continental, so that we really looked at this 6-acre site as a cohesive community across both of the buildings, both the existing building and the proposed building. So just talk a little bit about the project goals and really what were our 6 guiding forces as we made our decisions. First was to create a sense of community pride. The second was to provide a warm and inviting home for residents within the facility. Connect to the nature, indoor and outdoor, really critical as you'll hear a little bit later on as we look at the green spaces that we've created. Sense of quality and dignity. How can we create a facility that activates the residents, again, of both Yorktown Continental and continental gardens. And finally, to maximize the site qualities. What is there that we can actually continue to have? What can we enhance? And what can we add in order to create the best environment for the facilities? I think this was shown by Carrie Teague. It really is the site context. As you can see, our site is at 7151 York Avenue. We're just a little bit south of the shopping center in Southdale area. The existing Yorktown Continental building. You'll see the space in front of it where our facility will be going. I'm going to let Lena Carter talk to this. So to talk a little bit about the site plan, again, we are going to be providing a 100-unit facility on the front lot of the existing 7151 York Avenue site. As we went about designing this site, we really wanted to, again, look at that connection to the indoor and the outdoor. And we've really created 3 very unique environments, outdoor environments that I'll go into a little bit more detail. The one is really the boulevard. And how do we take that and boulevard on the front of York Avenue and actually engage and enliven it based on what the vision of the City Council and the City of Edina. The second one was, and that really is more of your, there'll be a lot of activity. People, some residents will like that activity. There'll be a lot of activity. There'll be traffic. There'll be people walking back and forth. The second area that we've created is the interior courtyard. I would say that's probably one where maybe somebody wants to get away from the frantic pace, but it also is going to have great amenities there. There'll be an activities courtyard. We'll have a fire pit and a lot of different landscaping environments that people can go and maybe meet someone and maybe get away from all the hectic things that are going on. And the last environment on the east side of the parking lot is what we're dubbing as the backyard. And it's where, first of all, our infiltration systems and stormwater management ponds will be. It's where we're looking at creating more native landscaping along with continuing to have the gazebo, raised gardens, and a walking trail that goes around the south pond that's about 1/8 of a mile around the walking trails. Give it a little bit more detail. The large boulevard. There was a question brought up about how can somebody from Yorktown Continentals get to York Avenue? If you're walking out of the Yorktown Continentals through the courtyard, you will be. Is there a pointer somewhere? Okay. Oof, this is technology. They'll be able to come across. This is our climate-controlled connection that we are proposing. They can walk through the courtyard, through the climate-controlled connection, through the building, out the porch, and directly onto York Avenue. We actually have created, again, I think as Carrie Teague spoke to, we have our building setback of 20 feet. But basically the minimum that we're away from York Avenue is 28 feet. At the north end, it goes up to about 31 feet away from the back side of the curb. We've looked at this, and as you'll see, the 7 trees along the east side of our meandering sidewalk are existing trees. We are working very hard to maintain those existing trees, and at the same time, on the opposite side, on the west side, including additional trees so that we're going to have a double-sided boulevard. You'll see that our sidewalk meanders a little bit, only because there's a couple things that we felt that it was important to maybe have a little bit of your classical boulevard, and also at the same time create a little bit of excitement in that boulevard and a little bit differentiation. And at the same time, we needed to actually keep the existing trees. And how can we actually pull it away from there so that we don't have any root issues? We also have some bench boulevard lighting areas, as well as a formal garden entrance and a perennial garden behind that. And this is actually what you would see as you're walking along York Avenue. It's a garden entrance, so it's not going to be gated. It's going to be a garden entrance, which behind that will have a perennial garden. Again, you have a classical boulevard along York, and you step into the garden, and it's going to be more informal, along with plantings along the building. This is just a couple pictures that I wanted to share. Here's our boulevard with trees on both sides, the perennial garden. This is just some courtyard landscape designs. We'll have green spaces with plantings along the side. We're also looking at having some more natural birch plantings and landscape beds as well. And this is the backyard landscape designs. Again, along the ponds, you'll see We're going to do a lot of native grasses and native wildflowers, as well as keeping, either relocating the existing vegetable gardens they are, and or building new vegetable gardens back there, along with the walking trails. And one last piece, we've been in conversation since we began this project with Metro Transit. At one point, we thought we might be able to get a new bus stop in front of our facility, which we are not. There are two existing ones serving this property, one at 7201 in front of the Durham Apartments, and then one at the intersection of York Avenue and Hazelton Road. I think I have pictures of both of those. This is the one at York Avenue. Actually has a shelter already there, although I hear there's confusion because the bench is on the other side, and then we'll want to clarify that a little bit so the sign and the shelter coincide. And the one at the bottom is the one in front of the Hennepin County Service Center, which again, it just has the bench. In our conversations so far, in working with Mark Noland, the transportation planner, Hennepin County, and Metro Transit, our goal is to provide a new shelter at the York Road and Hazelton bus stop along. It would be a heated shelter at that location, as well as the one at 7201. There's a shelter there, but it is unheated. And we're in conversations to how do we get heating in that one as well. So we can't have one at our site, but we're looking at improvements on the ones that are existing there for all of the residents and the community. I know that the one at Yorktown or York Avenue and Hazelton Road is very well used. And then I don't know if there was some questions. I think I'll have Elena begin her presentation on architecture, and then I can follow through with answering some of the questions that you had.
Thank you.
Thank you. Elena Carter from RSP Architects. This is the plan of the garage area. So as we had talked about earlier, on the site plan, you'd access at this point with your vehicle and exit at that point as well. We've separated the deliveries and food service at this area that can also go up to the elevator right to the kitchen areas above. So really not interacting with resident spaces. This is just the floor plan. You can see the units in blue. Dining areas, this is actually the coffee shop in the main level. Activity zone, yoga studio, wellness, craft area, circulation in the beige color, and then the back of house amenities. This would be where mechanical could be, elevator core, support spaces for other services throughout the building, and then we also have office spaces. I had heard a question asking about the studio units. All the studio units for the assisted living portion of the building exceed the 500. It's the studio units only for memory care that are part of the variance. So those are the smaller one-bedroom memory care units on the fourth floor. So second floor is assisted living, independent living mix. These are studios, but they are a larger studio than you will see on the upper levels. And then a mix on the third floor for assisted living, independent living. And then the fourth floor, we look at it as two memory care households. So the level is divided into two kitchen, dining, and living for these 12 residents, kitchen, dining, and living, and outdoor spaces for 12 residents. So it's really based on a home-like model. They're smaller in scale for individuals who will live there. Proposed exterior is a rendering. We did add some additional windows when we had met with the planning. The comment was, we just want to see more on the exterior of that building driving from the south to the north. So we had talked about some windows or an articulation, really looking at the window layout, the internal circulation. Adding some windows still allows us to do some of the internal workings of the building. The view facing York Avenue straight on, and then also, again, a closer up view looking at the south. An additional change that we have made since we met with planning was the connection between the two buildings would be enclosed and it would be heated so that they are in a climate-controlled walkway between both of the buildings. This was just a view looking at how would you get down to below grade in that parking garage as well. And then a bird's eye view looking back at the units. As was stated earlier, we've continued to do investigation into what is the need for the building. There is not a chiller needed for this building. There is minimal rooftop units that we would, if needed, we would have sound attenuation. Right now, we're only looking at, we need to ventilate the kitchen exhaust area out of the building, and we would want to mask that as well. So the units on the building will be putting as much in the basement level as we can, but there are some exhaust units that would need to come out of that, and we would have masking around that. And then sustainability goals. Part of the comments that we had gotten was to exceed the sustainability goals. So we'll be looking at selection of building materials, being locally sourced, careful placement on the site to maximize density and green space, and then also supporting mass transit. Those goals will continue to be evaluated as we move through the process with the design of the building. And then this is just the proof of parking. You can see in the shaded gray area, this would be the area that we would be able to, if needed, show that we can meet the parking requirements on the site. As far as the ADA stalls, we also do have additional ADA stalls that we have called out in this parking plan that exceed what we had earlier. So we have parking in this location across from the entry, along with several stalls at that front entry, and then also we have additional stalls for the new building as well in this location. And that would be not just in the, that would be in this plan. We also have these stalls called out in the earlier plan. With that, I'm going to turn over to Tim Getty to talk.
Question.
Oh,
you added a bank of windows on the south side of the building. What do you have on the north side of the building? Because you have no picture, really.
that would be the same. We would mirror that look on the north side of the building as well, so it would be matched on both sides.
You also added a walking loop around that stormwater feature, is that correct, since planning?
Yes.
And
You're talking about on the site plan.
Yeah.
Oh. Sorry. Right here. So you're talking about the walking loop. That was an added addition from previous, and it's about 1/8 of a mile around that, just giving additional walking around the site.
And then the undulating front sidewalk was an addition from between planning and now to
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. After we had met with the gentleman from the City Beautiful plan, we really focused on what were the guidelines. He had sent us the guidelines, and we incorporated those ideals within our plan prior to
Living
coming
streets.
Living streets. I apologize. Yes.
Okay.
City Beautiful.
I like that, but I thought it should
Living
correct it.
streets is all right. Okay.
Any other questions for Ms. Carter or Ms. Copeland before we bring up Mr. Getty? No. All right, Mr. Getty, come on up. Have a couple of minutes.
Good evening. Tim Getty with Health Dimensions Group, 4400 Baker Road, Minnetonka. We're going to be the operating organization of the senior living. We manage 30 senior living communities around the country. And most importantly, we care for approximately 2,700 seniors each day. Also, Premier is the current manager of Yorktown, and they are also one of Minnesota's largest affordable housing management companies. A little bit about the services. This will be licensed as housing with services, so there was some discussion regarding care and services. Individuals would move in independently, and as they aged in place or aged over time, they would have the availability of bringing in various care packages, which would involve the assistance with activities of daily living and really those personal type cares. Also on the top floor are 30 units of memory care, Alzheimer's, assisted living, which really provides a very safe and secure environment for those with dementia. We talked earlier about the affordable housing commitment. 10% of the units will be set aside for those with lower incomes, and duly noted that ownership is committed to serving local residents of more modest means.
And finally, a little bit on the staffing. Roughly, there'll be 36, 37 employees on the property in a 24-hour period, broken into 3 shifts: 7 to 3:30, 3 to 11:30, and then the night shift 11 to 7:30.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Getty at this point in time? Member Brindle.
I do. So we have Masaba Capital, and we have Health Dimensions, and an architect, and then we have David Dye. So who is going to operate this building, and who's going to be responsible for the staff and all of that? I just want to get that.
Premier Management will be managing the building. Health Dimensions' role is during startup and setting up the clinical practices, the policies, and procedures.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions for Mr. Getty at this point in time? All right. How about for Ms. Colpin or Ms. Carter at this time? All right. Stand by. We're going to open this up for a public hearing. Thanks, Mr. Getty. Do you want to pull everything off the middle there in case folks have an overhead they want to use?
I just answered one question that was asked earlier and never got answered.
Mr. Dye, why don't you come up and introduce yourself?
Hello, my name's
Thank you.
Hello, my name's David Dye. I live at 2504 Humboldt Avenue South. And one of the questions that was asked tonight was about parking. And currently at the site, there are 131 surface spaces with including 9 handicap stalls. And right now, without the proof of parking, what we are proposing on the Yorktown Continental site is 140 parking spaces with 9 handicap stalls.
All right. Any other questions for Mr. Dye at the moment? All right. Thanks, Mr. Dye. All right, I'm going to open this up for public testimony. I think, folks, you heard me earlier. You'll have 3 minutes, and when you see the yellow light come on, you've got 30 seconds. And please give us your name and address. If you'd like to use the center podium, it will give you a handheld microphone to use. Great. And we'll also have you introduce yourself.
Is this the handheld? Yeah. Right here? All right. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. My name is Ann Kiefer, and I have lived at Continental Apartments at 7151 York Avenue South, apartment 408, since May of 2012. And I'm currently serving as the president of Yorktown Continental Residents Association. This association represents the nearly 300 residents who reside at Yorktown. And a number of these residents, as you can see, are represented here tonight because of our deep concerns about the proposed addition of Continental Gardens onto the front of our property. While not all came to speak, there are some who have researched extensively, yielding some valuable information for your consideration. But before we proceed, Mr. Mayor, would you allow us 4 speakers who will talk on different aspects of this issue?
Yes, I will, and they'll all have the same amount of time as you, 3 minutes each.
Great. As president this year, I have heard fears and uncertainties, angst and anger expressed over and over, but perhaps most of all, sadness and an enormous sense of betrayal from these people that I have come to live among as neighbors and friends. As you know, Yorktown, like so many of the buildings within the York Street corridor, is set back from the road and is well landscaped front and back with over 52 mature trees, flower beds, and gardens. After personally enjoying Centennial Lake concerts for many years with my growing family from Lakeville, it was my retirement dream to come and live here because I loved the Edina open spaces and park-like atmospheres. and be surrounded by a great locale, peaceful green space, and particularly with the promise of an upcoming building rehabilitation to start soon. Regrettably, these promises and timetables have been changed or withdrawn completely, and now we find ourselves looking at the simultaneous construction of another four-story senior building, four-story senior living building directly across from our front door, thereby losing our park-like serenity, many trees, and parking spaces, which are already in short supply. Additionally, there are a host of other hazards and issues to be addressed, along with the overall congestion that this new building will bring. But at this time, I'd like to ask Dan Spear to come. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Ms. Kiefer.
May I clarify something before I start? They were not showing Ann's pictures from the beginning, so just to state that, and I'll keep this one.
Yeah, would you like to have
And
it shown? Or you have your own photo to show?
Yes, they're different, but it's all right, I think. To clarify something else, I think Ann meant 4 speakers after her, if that's all right.
You can have as many as you want. It's a public hearing.
Thank you. I'm Daniel Spear. My home
Put
is...
your picture right in the middle of the, if you want the picture to be shown, we need to have it in the middle of the...
She wasn't picking up on it.
No, you have to put it in the middle of that whiteboard. It's showing.
Yeah, I don't have mine yet. I'm not ready for it yet.
Okay.
I'm not ready for it yet.
All right.
Okay. I'm Daniel Spear. I live at 7151 York Avenue, apartment number 1202, facing York Avenue. Being an early riser at 4 a.m. on Friday morning, I awoke. Later on, I heard a truck go by. I thought of the residents in the proposed building who will live closer to York Avenue than I do. This picture was taken 20 feet off the road, or a little more. Between 4:29 and 5:01, 10 trucks went by, averaging every 3.5 minutes. When I moved in, it surprised me how noisy it is on the 12th floor. Would you like your parents to live here? A major concern of the residents of Yorktown is the proposed parking. On site plan A11, submitted July 29, the parking lot east of the existing building has 137 exposed spaces, plus 5 handicap, 4 less than we have now, which are all occupied. These pictures show our loading and unloading zone. Along here is our loading and unloading zone. Here and here. You notice the trucks here, and the garbage truck here. These pictures, and where the trash is taken out, a necessity for the Yorktown building to function. It would be unwise and impossible to replace this area with 32 parking spaces, as proposed. This would leave Yorktown with a total of 105 spaces on the east side. The projected removal of the loading zone would replace all our parking too far from the building. The addition of 33 spaces on the south side per site plan A11 would necessitate removing even more green space next to Durham Apartments. On easement plan A19, and landscaping plan L100, parking for staff at Continental Gardens on the north side and visitor parking on the south side removes another 23 spaces, which leaves Yorktown with 115. The Institute of Transportation Engineers site parking demand requires 156 exposed spaces for Yorktown. These plans show even more land being procured from Yorktown to accommodate parking for Yorktown for Continental Gardens. What is to prevent Continental Garden visitors and residents from using these above-ground parking spaces? Along here. And thank you.
All right, thanks, Mr. Spear.
Oh, I would like to, as long as I have a couple of minutes left, if I do, a couple seconds. This is what we have now. All the green space around us, and we will be left with a parking lot.
Would you put that back up there, please, and try to illustrate it again with your finger?
This is from Google Maps.
Yep.
Notice the line of cars. Here is 7151 Yorktown. Here is the lovely park behind us and the nice green berm we look at. This is the building next to us, which you see is set back from the street. That was something that came up about this building would blend in with the corridor. All the buildings along here are set back from the street with lovely treed walkways. Those were the first pictures that Ann was showing.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Sonny?
Hello, I'm Sunny Lenzo, and I have lived at 7151 York Avenue South, Unit 508, for 2 years. Before I retired, I spent 30 years as a construction insurance specialist, both as an underwriter and as a broker for CNA Insurance and Wausau Insurance Company here in Minneapolis. Many times the client who was considering a major renovation or a new building would ask me to review their plans with my risk control specialist, with an eye toward lowering their insurance premiums by reducing possible risks even before a building was built. With that in mind, when I first looked at the drawings for the proposed new building at 7151 York, I had two major safety concerns. The first is that there is no interior enclosed connection between the new building and the current building. At the previous meeting, it was said that this sister building would house an activity zone on the first floor to be used by residents of both buildings. If these amenities are to be utilized by us, we will need to go outside and use a curving walkway. The revised plan I saw tonight showed a controlled walkway that didn't even come to our door. It came to the edge of our building and had a climate-controlled walkway. We would need an enclosed walkway because our aging, mobility-challenged population would need an enclosed walkway to get from one building to the next in inclement weather. The majority of our people have some kind of mobility challenge. The revised plan also suggests that we use the courtyard for exercise classes. The majority of our attendees at our exercise classes, which are seated classes, use walkers, canes, and wheelchairs. This plan would not be either practical or safe. Secondly, I am concerned about what the impact of the change in our building from 2 to 1 vehicle entrance may have on congestion. As a result, I prepared a list of our current traffic. See page 5 of the text for the City Council meeting. Remember, this study takes into account current traffic. It does not contemplate any kind of an increase in the traffic for the new building. Funneling all of this traffic to one entrance will lead to a great deal of congestion. It may well lead to an increase in slips and falls as residents attempt to negotiate around more and more vehicles, parking and waiting, loading and unloading at one entrance. It would also slow the amount of time for ambulances and first responders to reach residents. As noted on page 5, for the past year there have been 200 calls to first responders to 7151 York. It's been suggested we could alleviate this congestion by scheduling deliveries. But if you look at the times and the types of deliveries, I don't see how this could make more than a small dent in this problem. 8 of my friends fell this year and 3 won't be coming back. 1 of 3 seniors over 65 falls each year. We don't want to be one of these statistics, but this proposal looks dangerous to me.
Thanks, Ms. Lenzo.
My name is Joanne McComb. I live at Yorktown Continental, and I live in 1112, apartment 1112. Variances required for the new building include the density, The existing building at 7151 York Avenue is already over maximum density at 45 units per acre in a high-density area. See submitted text, page 3. Mesaba Capital is seeking density of 64 units per acre, over double the city standard. This study does not include the new development at Byerly's and the 2 large apartments at Southdale Mall. Low-income housing, 10 units out of 100 at 50% below median income is $29,581 per year income. This is $17,911 over federal poverty guidelines. At the July 9th Planning Commission, it was said that low-income housing would be 10% off market rate. Not a place most of us could afford to migrate to. One of the concerns is the rent increase Yorktown Continental is contemplating. Let me see. Is it shown there? They are seeking $915 for a 455 square foot apartment. A letter from Joe Holmberg, dated October 31st, 2013, and I gotta find that, states that Metro HRA must determine that the rent for the unassisted that the rent is reasonable in relation to rents charged for comparable unassisted rents in the area. These are some of the apartment ads that we have, that we are showing. And this one. Not very straight. This is a page from the apartment rentals. It is Park Lawn is a 700 square foot apartment, 250 more feet than we have, with heated indoor pool, fitness center, heated parking, etc. We do not have any of these amenities. I would also like to point out, under HUD rights and responsibilities, and there that is, that residents have the right to participate in the decisions regarding the well-being of the project and their home. My friend Mert, who has made Yorktown her home for more than 30 years, served for several years on the residents' board. This board has now been disabled because decisions were being made by Premier Management beforehand, with no participation from the residents. Even though Premier has been promising vouchers to Yorktown residents, Metro HRA states that its website that it is not taking Section 8 applications at this time. The existing vouchers are being utilized with a waiting list of over 1,500 people. The current owner of Yorktown, Archie Givens, stated on August 4th, 2014, that Premier Management does not have HUD approval for remodeling Yorktown or a secured loan. Will our only door be shared with garbage if Continental Gardens moves ahead with their plan without our remodel?
All right, thank you. Good evening.
Mayor Hovland, council members and staff, I'm Nina Flanders. For 10 years, my home has been 1114 east side of Continental, Yorktown Continental, I'll get it. I look out at the street directly in front of me. To my left, Xerxes Avenue wanders around, showcasing the homes with myriads of streets and a small T that leads to Adams Park. In summer, I look down on an eye-appealing yard with mature trees, flower beds, the gardens, and the gazebo where we all enjoy the park. I better put it in the right place, right? Excuse me. Where we all enjoy the park-like atmosphere that we have. Winter brings its own beauty when the hidden homes are visible again and the trees are covered in ermine and pearl, as one poet describes it. My background includes 10 years in the construction field where I served as a recording secretary and administrative assistant for architects and engineers. As such, I am very aware of the importance of aesthetics to the architectural planners and the reason I call attention to the aesthetic beauty in our surrounding areas that Archie Griffin Sr. and the planners of Yorktown Continental started by planting all the saplings that are now mature trees. This picture taken during my early residency, excuse me, this one was taken during and it shows the gazebo and a pond that was removed, and the space is now a gorgeous garden. The gazebo is very active. This is a very active community whose average age is 83. I'm 85. It speaks. And one resident is 100, and according to Phyllis Brevig, she's the third centurion that has lived here. It speaks well of the atmosphere where caring residents help each other to live more productive lives, no matter what the age or handicap. Does that berm out in front shield this building from toxic traffic fumes, while nature's trees add oxygen? I see nothing in these plans to enhance our living experience. In fact, quite the opposite, as we people using canes and walkers and wheelchairs, some 70 of the residents, will find it more difficult to walk around both buildings to get to York Avenue and the shops across the street. With a new parking lot, I expect to see many more of these walkers here, or canes, after the first ice storm, as the elderly slip and slide across the extended roadway to the parking lot. Continental, don't take my... No, leave my stuff alone. Good Lord, you're trying to take my stuff. Continental Gardens is a beautiful building, while the community has a need for more care centers. This building is too large for the allotted space, destroying the ambience that the residents have now. I trust the council will be attentive to the 10-page document the residents have submitted, as the speakers tonight have touched on some of our concerns. I urge the council to vote on this ill-conceived project and end with 2 pictures and a fitting description from a line a popular songwriter and singer wrote in the 70s. Joni Mitchell wrote, "You have taken paradise and turned it into a parking lot." And that's what I'll be looking at.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening.
My name is Bernice Brown. I live at 7151 York Avenue South, apartment 708. Yorktown is my home, and I'm proud of it. Most of our residents are under Section 8 or 236, as am I. And I have lived here and enjoyed every part of my home: the lobby, the dining room, our library, the conference room, the laundry, etc. I believe everyone here in our building feels the same. We would have to make many concessions, both inside and outside our building. We would have to cut down our lovely trees, take away the view of our community around us. Changes made to our common areas, such as inside, in the kitchen, the library, the conference room, lobby, and moving our main entrance to the back of our building, where we have the maintenance room and the compactor for our trash. At the present time, we have a trash chute on each floor that drops into the trash compactor. If we have to move our trash area, it's been proposed that it would be done on the northwest corner of our building, and that is where we have our library, our conference room, and right next to it, our dining room. Do our residents have to carry our trash through the dining room to get to to empty them. At the present time, we have the VOA senior lunch program in our building, and that accommodates any senior in the Edina area and in our building. Our residents would be lost without having that program. When Mr. Archie Givens Sr. built Yorktown Continental Apartments, it was the first low-income building built in Edina. I don't think Mr. Givens Sr. would have ever envisioned selling off part of this property. It wasn't easy for him to get the project approved by the city. I'm thankful he fought so hard for it. Yorktown became a presence in the city, and the city was proud of it. Don't take that away from us now by hiding us behind another building. Please, commissioners, do not make your decision until you have personally visited our building to see what is in store for Yorktown Continental and to hear some of our other residents that could not be here tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Good evening.
Well, change of pace here. I'm Sarah Amadon. I live at 7200 York. We are most concerned about traffic congestion, which is already bad on York Avenue and in the area generally at the lunch hour and at evening rush and on weekends. And I think this project will make it something like 1,000 new units, residential units, which I think will probably be 1,000 or more new cars on our roads. In addition, I've just been told recently by our property manager that our electrical infrastructure in our area is substandard. He used the expression, we are power starved. So I would like to be assured that that is being addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? Anyone have anything new to add?
I'll move to close the public hearing.
Second. Got a motion and a second to close the public hearing. Is there a discussion there? All those in favor say aye. 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 Opposed say nay. Carried. We got a few questions that I think came from the testimony. Director Milner, the last one was about the electrical infrastructure. Is it adequate to handle all of this activity that's been going on out in the Southdale District, including this proposal at Yorktown Gardens?
Mayor, I have not heard that comment before, but I'll be checking with our contact at Xcel Energy in the very near future to see if that is an issue for continued development.
Okay.
We haven't had the traffic
Yeah,
WSB up.
I think
Maybe
we should
that.
bring Chuck Rickard up here.
He's been waiting to come up, I know.
We've had several people that have traffic concerns and funneling vehicles through a single curb cut where they've got dual curb cuts now, just general traffic volumes in York, what this proposed project might add to that overall volume, considering the type of residents that would be proposed for living there. Could you tell us what your analysis was of all those different issues?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, as far as the curb cuts go, I believe they are staying the same. You know, there's two right-in, right-out accesses today, and I believe they're staying as that in the future. So the access to the site isn't changing from what it is today. So that's one comment. As far as how much traffic, we looked at, you know, for this site, you know, for the senior and assisted living part of it, an additional about 250 trips a day. In the PM peak, about 20 trips, and in the AM peak, about 16 new trips. So that's how much additional traffic we are assuming as part of this development. Now, we also looked at the other developments and the reference to 1,000 new units. I think includes the Southdale Apartments and, some of the other newer developments that are occurring, the Byerlys and those too. We took all those into account when we did our analysis. As far as the background traffic growth, we included those as part of our background traffic analysis. We found that, short of in 2030 when that signal is needed at Park Lawn, the existing roadway system can handle this additional traffic that we're talking about here.
I think you should clarify that last comment. The existing roadway can handle the projected volume until 2030, or not until 20? It can't handle the volume until 2030.
It can handle the volume up until 2030, or when that volume reaches that level where a traffic signal is needed at the Park Lawn in New York intersection. That's the only intersection that we found a problem with, is that one intersection. And that's not until the 2030 volume.
Okay. All right. I'm thinking that we should clear up this affordable housing issue that Ms. McComb raised. Somebody want to deal with that? Mr. Dye? Yes. The notion of what does affordable mean in the new building?
Yes. The Continental Gardens is being developed primarily as a market rate project, whereas Yorktown Continental is a subsidized project. But within the 100 units, 10 units will be held back for people with incomes at or below 60% AMI. And so for a single person, that is an income of $34,000 and change. For two people, that's $39,000 and change.
Okay.
I think the issue is the way Yorktown Continental subsidies and qualifications changing? That was the other question.
Within the existing building. The current building, no. Regardless of what the rent is set by HUD on the Section 8 HAP contract, the residents that are in the Section 8 units will be paying 30% of their adjusted income, period.
And it seems to me when we had a discussion about redoing the Yorktown Continental, it was that no one was leaving the building. You were going to work through unit by unit. Is that still the same?
During the relocation, during the rehab, our intention is that we will house, for every 12 units, 8 people will actually have to move to a new unit for 2 to 3 weeks.
Right.
And we're trying to find those 8 units within the project. Those units will be fully furnished, the kitchens will be fully stocked, cable TV will be provided. So yes, no one would have to, that's our intention.
Your intention is that they not leave the building, but that isn't a guarantee, is I think what I just heard you say.
Correct.
Then there seems to be some confusion in moving the door and the existing rooms as they are and the trash compactor and the chutes that go down to it. So could we talk about that?
We can. I have no clue what is the
trash. That's okay. We'll just talk about it. Don't worry about where it came from. Just talk about what it's going to be.
The trash is not moving. The resident, currently right now, we have 2 entries. We have a front entry that would be facing York. We have a rear entry that faces the rear parking lot. And we have parking spread all around the building.
Yes.
What we want to do is centralize the parking at the rear of the building.
Yeah.
We want to take the rear entry and make that our main entrance. In terms of the program spaces within the project, none of those are being impacted other than they're being, refurbished. We are, with the exception that we have a commercial grade kitchen in there that is not being used at all. We're going to take a portion of that kitchen and make it into the lobby. We'll also have a serving kitchen. So part of the kitchen is going to become a lobby, and the kitchen will be reduced in size, but will still be quite functional. In terms of the entry that's on the Yorktown side of things, I I think that we're still working through the connection between the two buildings. To me, the most sense would be to have that connection be from what is currently the main entrance on the west side of the building to the new building. My personal opinion.
But in the design that was just produced showing a covered porte cochere that's heated, does that actually go from building to building? Or do you
Yes.
have to walk out?
No.
Okay. It's hard to see in the drawing.
Very hard. I would like to have seen a better drawing of that.
Walk back through your parking issues again. There was some concern by Mr. Spear, based on the calculations he did, about what the parking situation is now compared to what it will be if the new building is approved.
Yes.
And I think you did make some attempt to discuss that earlier, but I think it would be worthwhile revisiting in terms of the
Yes.
number of general use spaces plus handicap spaces.
Yes. Currently on the site, there are 131 surface spaces. There are 9 handicap stalls.
Could I clarify something?
No, sir.
I'm sorry.
And what we're proposing now is 140 surface spaces and 9 handicap stalls with proof of parking for how many spaces? 33 additional spaces.
Delivery was an issue too. I'm sorry.
Well, I'd like to return to the affordability issue. Can we? do
Sure,
that?
sure.
Okay. Because I'm looking at the correspondence that we saw when the residents
This is
put
back on the
together a
affordability
packet.
issue.
And there are 2 notices in here that cause me to have questions. One is dated October 31st, 2013. It's from Affordable Homes for All. There's a paragraph, the long second paragraph, or third paragraph, that begins, "For tenants who do not receive Section 8 rental assistance, paying off the mortgage could result in an increase in the rent for your unit." And then it goes on to say different conditions, whether they're staying in the unit. I'm sure you're familiar with the content. Then there's a second, notice to tenants of intention to submit a request to MHFA for approval of an increase in maximum permissible rents. This is dated 5/14/14. Take notice that on 6/2/14, we plan to submit a request for approval of an increase in the maximum permissible rents to the Minnesota Housing Finance Agency. There's a table that gives rents, and there's a comment period. So no change to the resident payment portion for Section 8 residents. Residents will still pay 30% of income, but how does all this information read together? Because I've got a law degree. And when I look at this and read the stuff together and the notice periods and the comment periods, it sounds to me like there very well could be increases in rents. So maybe you can back up just a little bit, tell us how many of the 235?
Of the 264 units,
Yeah, okay.
179 units are covered under the Section 8 HAP contract. HAP stands for Housing Assistance Payment.
Is this HUD? Is this Section 8 or is
This
it
is
not?
Section 8, and it's administered by Minnesota Housing.
Okay, what are those numbers again? It was
179 out of the 264 units.
Okay.
And the current HAP contract expires October 1st, 2014. And that is the end of a 20-year contract period. And at the end of 20 years, the building owner either renews the contract or doesn't. And what we are negotiating with HUD as part of the refinance for the rehabilitation of the Yorktown Continental is a new HAP contract. It'd be for a 20-year term. It'd be for 179 units. And regardless of what the rents are negotiated in that HAP renewal, the existing Section 8 tenants will pay the exact same amount of money that they do today.
It seems to me we had this discussion when we were looking at this,
Yep.
at the remodeling, if you will.
Yes.
The refurbishing of
Yes.
Yorktown Continental, and I think one of the promises that we elicited was that, to the extent possible, that the rentals rate would remain the same on the HEP renewal.
What was said was that the tenant's payment would remain the same. Now, the government's housing assistance payment may well change, and will change. And it is very confusing, but if the rent is $1,000 or $10,000 a month, the tenant's payment remains the same that they're paying right now.
Your rent roll goes up, but their portion is the same.
Right, but the housing assistance from the federal government increases to cover that difference.
Member Bennett has some follow-up.
What if the federal government does not continue the program at its current level? Then what happens?
It's a 20-year contract. It's so billions, if not trillions of dollars of mortgage financing are based on that contract. I can't imagine that not being withheld or upheld for that 20 years.
What happens to the almost 100 units, the 264 minus 179? What happens then to the rents in those units?
Okay, those units are called Section 236. It's a whole different program. It's not subsidized in the same way. It's subsidized in that the rents currently for the one-bedroom units, the Section 236 units, is $493. And two things could happen, and it's yet to be determined because what we proposed to HUD was that they increase those rents from $493 to $800, and that they would give us housing preservation vouchers, which are not from the local HUD office, they're from Washington, D.C. In which case, their rent payments would possibly actually be less than what they are in terms of what they pay, what the tenant pays. Those vouchers, that was our proposal to HUD. The other way that could go, so we either get the vouchers or we don't. If we don't get the vouchers, then the Unit 236 units, any rent increase that's negotiated for those units would have to be based on a what's called a budget-based rent increase proposal to HUD. And those rent increases are per the regulatory agreement with HUD are limited to no greater than 10% per year. And I would say that over the last 20 years, how much has been, there's been zero increase over the last 20 years or 10 years. I would anticipate that if there are rent increases on the 236 units, that would be in the 5% range.
So either your rent roll goes up and you get the credits and their rents stay the same, or it's rent controlled and it goes up by a certain ceiling each year.
There's a max ceiling each year, and each year you'd have to go to HUD to ask for that rent increase, and you could probably appreciate how unpleasant that is.
and it's a lengthy process.
It is.
Okay.
So, can I? Did that? Okay.
Yeah, just
one
other issue there.
Oh.
It seems to me like several years ago we had a Section 8 contract expiring on Oak Glen. We went through the same discussion, and the owner was down in Chicago, and he was going to not renew the contract with HUD and instead condominiumize them, and then we had to step in and help assure continued affordability there. And I can't remember exactly what we did to convince the owner in Chicago to continue Oak Glen as a Section 8 housing project, but it sounds like you want to continue Yorktown Continental as a home for folks
we do.
that can be there either as Section 8 renters or 236 participants.
That is correct. And it might be helpful also just kind of give an update on where we are with HUD and the rehab thing. So in 2012 was in your package, the first notice was issued at some point in 2012. And at that time, kind of going back to all the meetings we had for the bonds and all that kind of stuff, but there was a so we need two things to continue as a Section 8 property. Number one, we need to have a HAP renewal with HUD. three things. Number two, we need a HUD mortgage. And number three, we needed to secure tax credit equity. And the HAP renewal, we're in constant negotiation with HUD about, I would say that within 30 days we will have an answer from them. The HUD mortgage, as soon as we have the HAP rents agreed upon, we could submit for our firm application. Then it's a 30-day review period by the local office and whatever. And then in 2012, the tax credit equity was by far the most problematic part of the financing proposal. There was a dislocation in the market. It went from a $9 billion annual market to $3 billion annual market in 2009, thanks to Wall Street. But in any case, that market has been recovering, and we have Goldman Sachs as an investor in the tax credits. So, long story short, I believe that we're in a position to close on the rehab in possibly September. Hate to use the word certainly by October when you're dealing with HUD, but September, October time range, if that is helpful.
Okay. All right. So the question of the deliveries that currently come to your back door, I know you have an entrance on the south that looks like a delivery entrance.
Yes.
So what comes to the back door now, and do you have parking proposed for that now new front door? So how will you handle what currently comes in?
Right. So the trash room will be enclosed there at what is now the southeast corner.
Yep.
We have a drive entry into that area for a trash truck to back into. Currently, we have 3 garbage pickups a week, and that would stay the same.
Okay. And what other deliveries do you have? It looked like there were some other things that come to that back door. Was there?
I would say that most of the deliveries that we have right now, would be anything from VOA that was mentioned before, Volunteers of America. Anything to do with Meals on Wheels would come to that rear entrance.
Which is now the new front entrance.
Which will now be the front entrance.
So when they come there, where do they park? Because you have handicap parking along there.
I think they'd have to pull up to the front entrance and offload.
Member Sprague.
I have a follow-up on the circulation issue and the access to the front. Right now, are there sidewalks from the front entry to the street?
There are.
Or do they walk in the parking lot? How do they?
They walk in the parking lot. Walk in the parking lot north, and then to a sidewalk that goes to York Avenue. And so, what is proposed now, and that's all, of course, uncovered. So, what would happen now under the new proposal with this new building is that it would be a covered walkway to within 20 feet of York Avenue. So, I think. Same amount of distance, it's covered.
So in other words, in the new plan, they have a climate-controlled access to York year-round.
Correct.
And covered. And right now, they have to go outside through a parking lot
yes.
to a stub sidewalk to get to York.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Flanders had several photos that she showed. She had a distinct concern about loss of nature. It seemed to me like her photos were taken looking east. I'm not sure of that, but there was at least one that was looking west, but most of them were looking east. So how is that east view going to be changed from what exists today if this were approved?
It'd be nice to show the site plan. Good? Okay. So basically, they're. Sorry. I'm looking for a mouse. Okay. I'll do that. It's hard for me to read that. So. I want this. I just wanted to.
Yeah, just use your
I'll
use
use
finger.
my fingers. So basically, there's one more row of parking being put in. Is that correct? Okay. And
So you would be adding one row of parking to the existing parking that is back there.
correct.
The current parking actually goes on all four sides of the building. On this side, there's one row, this row, and then this is a first. So really the modification that we're looking at for anybody looking, are you looking east? There'll be less green space with actually these 2 rows of parking.
2 rows. Okay. So from this black line that way.
And they have space for 2 rows. They're putting the.
There's a gazebo right now that is probably located right about here, where my finger is. And that'll be moved to here. Right now, there's not. So we have a walkway proposed that would take people back into this wooded area, also provide access to the park, which currently right now doesn't have a walkway to. We have substantial, I don't even know if any of these are new plantings right here, Della, right?
There's additional new evergreen trees, specifically along here. This is all new
Yeah,
planting.
right there,
And
yeah.
then there is some here as well. This grove currently exists with a large flower garden that already is there, and that will be remaining as well. There's raised gardens in a couple areas, and we're going to create this on the southeast side to be where all of the raised gardens will be located in the future.
Right. And then, obviously, these plantings along York. But in terms of visible to the residents of Yorktown Continental, this area will remain, mostly green.
Can we have this crown to the camera?
Sure.
Okay. Dr. T, can you put that under the camera?
Which one is it? This one.
So it's the mayor's question. It appears that there's mature trees that abut the existing parking lot, and that those will need to be removed for the addition of 2 lanes of parking?
Yes. Yes, and so we're putting new plantings along the rear property.
But the mature trees will be removed?
Yes.
And then the mature trees in the front, of course, also?
Yes.
And then the proof of parking would involve the area on the south with the mature trees?
Yes.
Which mature trees are on the front? Oh, on the south. Well, the front where the building will go.
So there's looks like 2 rows of parking around the back at present, and then there would be
4
rows.
Yes.
So you'd move the hardscape from the front of the building as it exists now and basically swap out that hardscape? I mean, you'd lose it from the front of the building because you got new building there, obviously.
Correct.
And then it would be moved to the back of the existing building instead of being in the front of the existing building.
Yes. In terms of residents that are on the west facade of Yorktown Continental, there would be the courtyard space, and then obviously the building, and still a view over the building for most of the tenants.
Ms. Carter, what's the dimension of the courtyard?
At the tightest point between the 2 buildings, it's 62 feet.
62 feet? And how about
Yes.
the length?
At the tightest. And the length is in this area is over 200 feet from this point to this point.
Just curious how wide right here, the widest part?
Oh, the widest point is about 84 feet, approximately.
Member Sprague?
I have a question on the activities in the building being proposed. So what type of communal activities will be happening, and which of those will be open to the residents of the Continental?
Sure. On the first floor, we have a hair salon, we have a coffee shop, and there's a dining area. And I would foresee that all three of those, they're all for fee, but all would be available and open to the residents of Yorktown Continental.
What about the porch?
The porch, as planned on York Avenue, again, it will be open to any of the residents of Yorktown Continental, Continental Gardens, and residents of Edina, because, again, it's open off of the York Avenue sidewalk.
But they could also come through the building and enjoy some leisure time on the front porch, correct?
Absolutely. Absolutely. That's actually how I believe someone from Yorktown Continentals would get to York Avenue. They would come through the climate-controlled walkway through our commons area to the porch. Yes.
Thank you.
One question you can answer for me, I thought Bernice Brown put it well, is she said, don't hide us behind another building. So what's your feeling about, or your thinking about why life will be better with a building in front of them facing York Avenue? What's better about life after Yorktown Gardens is built?
Well, I believe we're giving them
than it
another.
is for Yorktown Continental right now.
I believe that we've taken a site and a proposed plan, and really, it's not the quantity of green space. I really believe it's the quality of green space that we're continuing to enhance, and actually different environments. If you look at somebody on the west side today, they're looking at a parking ramp and the berm, but they still can't see York Avenue. We're going to actually be creating a courtyard, which will have activities for them with the fire pit, with whatever activities are going to be created for both of the tenants, both Yorktown Continental and Continental Gardens. They can go to the coffee shop there, etc. So I think we are looking at how can we actively engage the residents of both facilities. You know, at this point, the berm height is 20 feet. To the podium of ours is 34 feet. I mean, there's something in front of their building right now today.
Yeah. I guess looking at it from the perspective of Yorktown Continental, the way I see it, the things that make things better, is I do like centralized parking in one location. Right now, to me, it's a real pain to park over here and walk all the way around and whatever. So I like the idea of centralized parking. I think the covered walkway to York Avenue will be a great benefit to the existing tenants of Yorktown Continental. I think the activities of the porch, the coffee shop, the hair salon, I do believe will get used, regularly.
The bus stop improvements will also be of a benefit to everybody on the site.
When you talk about the view of looking west from Yorktown Continental, basically, it's a 12-story building. Anything above the fourth floor will have, an expansive view to the west. For the tenants that are on the second, third, and fourth floor, because there are no units on the first floor on this elevation, there will be a beautiful building with a beautiful courtyard. I don't see that being. And I've heard many, many, many comments from the residents about noise from New York Avenue. They'll have a much better buffer. So.
And for the higher up residents, what will they be looking down on? What's the building top consist of?
It's a flat roof. We're talking about having exhaust for the commercial kitchen on this rooftop. We had talked about initially chillers on both, and there's opposition to noise and the way they look. So we're talking about a different HVAC mechanical system that would get rid of that.
What do you mean?
It won't,
a different.
It won't be on the rooftop. It'll be
in the basement.
In the garage.
Oh, garage.
There'll be 3 types of systems: individual units,
right.
The Magic Packs down in the garage, and we're looking at an option for the commercial kitchen either being enclosed on the 4th floor or being on the roof, but it'll be just the exhaust from the commercial kitchen.
Versus a chiller that has a noise.
We're very familiar with the chillers. We've been there and back, and we don't want to go there again. That can be a real quality of life issue.
We will have some out on the 4th level. We will have some outdoor patios, and on the 2nd level there is a terrace from our dining room that actually overlooks the courtyard as well. So those are some of the things that residents can look down on as well.
How would you adjust, Member Sprague, go ahead if you have. How would you adjust for the fact that you may be encroaching on the utility easement? We find out there are utilities there, and now you've got to move back another 10 feet. How does that adjustment get made?
Well, I think there's a couple ways, excuse me, that we'd look at that with the city. First of all, we'd find out what utilities are in there, and can they be relocated? And either that, or we'd look at how can we work around those. So those are really the 2 things. Our first investigation, we're finding that we don't see anything there, and so that's really how we've based our decision on that right now through all of our Ulta survey and the rest of investigation.
Ms. Clark, on the big package here, I don't see an east elevation for the new building. I'd be interested in seeing what it is that people will be looking at if this were approved.
The courtyard image.
Yeah, I'm talking about the building facade itself.
Yeah, you're looking at from the courtyard in this direction.
Correct. So what does that side of the building look like?
The intention is that it is similar to the other building. I don't have that plan in front of the exterior elevation plan in front of me. I do apologize. But the intention is that we take the aesthetic. If you look at the bird's eye view or the courtyard view, the same aesthetic from the roadway on York Avenue, we're mimicking on the backside of this image. I apologize that there was not an east elevation. I'm surprised by that because they're drawn, and that the intention is that the same vernacular is all the way around all 4 sides of that building. The bird's eye view you can kind of see it as you're peeking through the garage, and you can see it from this bird's eye view looking at the...
I guess that's somewhat helpful.
Okay.
I don't see any balconies on that side like I do on the York Avenue side or on the south side. I'm assuming the south side mimics the north side, or the north side mimics the south side.
So
I don't see any balconies overlooking that beautiful courtyard.
So we have a terrace on the upper level, and we have some balconies within these units, and then also looking down at the end, we have balconies. And some of it is with assisted living and especially memory care on the upper levels, there wouldn't be balconies. And so we really look at the population type that's intended to live in those units.
So but you do have a terrace for tenant use.
Correct.
That would accommodate, how many people do you think, comfortably?
On this terrace, we anticipate it's off of the dining room area, so we're hoping to have all 120 that could sit right inside of the dining room, and then we're hoping to have between 55 and 60 that'll have a patio area outside. So close to the window, because not everybody's going to want to go outside, but that area. And then we also have off of the memory care upper levels, we have terrace areas off of their dining room as well. So the memory care residents can be in a protected, enclosed space to be able to get outside as well for those residents.
All right. So if this were potentially approved on a preliminary basis and you came back for final, we'd want to see some real detail for that east elevation so that we could have a sense of what people would potentially be looking at that would be residents residing on the west side of Yorktown Continental.
Okay.
All right. Member Sprague?
On that same note, I'd like to go back to the York Avenue streetscape and show you a picture, which is in front of Whole Foods. 1 second here, just going to pop it up on the screen. So that streetscape, now I know you can't articulate like that, but if you look at the landscaping gardens, that's actually perennials and rocks in that right-of-way, street right-of-way, and then the undulating sidewalk. That, to me, is one of the best urban landscapes in that France Avenue corridor. And I'd like to see some thought given to doing more on the street side of the sidewalk other than just turf.
They've got trees in it, 4 trees in it.
I know there's some turf in there. I'm talking about the perennial treatments, though, because it seems to me like the resident side is very beefed up and beautiful, but a little more thought into that right-of-way side would be would make for a better project and a better streetscape. I don't think it would take much.
I think also a little more detail on your York Avenue entrance. You showed us the pillars and the entryway from the street level, from grade, but we didn't really see the entrance itself. Member Swenson?
Yeah, just this way.
Okay.
I'll move resolution 2014-84, but I have some adds. That the buildings are connected by a heated walkway, that there's no change in space between the buildings, so if you do run into utility, you'll have to come back because this is based on the separation between those 2 buildings right now. Heated walkway that's covered. Okay, thank you. An improved bus shelter. I'm hoping for heat in the bus shelter. No chiller on the roof or in the courtyard. Extra window rows on both the north and south as you depicted. The added walkway around that one retention pond. That wasn't on our plans, along with the added gardens put back in there. You did say you're moving the gazebo. I can't remember if our plan had the moved gazebo or not, but I expect it. No, it doesn't. I expect it to be moved. And some sort of additional boulevard design as they come out of the front porch.
Did you say both bus shelters? Because they had mentioned working with Metro Transit to put heat in 2 bus shelters.
2 bus shelters? I heard you talk about being able to get to 1.
Our work in progress with them is the existing would get heat, and that's the one at 7201 Durham.
Right.
And then the other one, it would be a brand-new bus shelter, heated bus shelter.
At York,
Okay.
and York and Hazelton.
York and Hazelton,
So
yes.
2 bus shelters. Did anyone have anything else to add before I finish that?
You may want to specify a noise study, such as what was done at 6500 France for whatever equipment is going to be used, because I believe with 6500 France, that was very informative as to what the residents at Point of France would and would not hear from equipment on that building. So what they're planning to use on the roof will, I'm sure, produce some kind of noise, and that's...
An exhaust wouldn't be a noise-producing mechanism, but a chiller or mechanicals would. I
So
thought
the only thing I thought was on the roof is exhaust, correct?
Right.
She said. Correct?
But it will produce
Then if
some
there's
noise.
anything other than that, I guess you're going to have to put it under or give us a noise study that we need to approve.
Well, and motorized exhaust will produce noise and odors.
Do we need to add something about the guarantee of the shared use facilities? Or, you know,
Guaranteeing,
that the
guaranteeing is almost a permanent easement through
Correct.
the front building by the
Carrie?
residents of the back building?
Yeah, that would be an appropriate condition here.
Okay, so that there would be guaranteed easement from the existing Yorktown Continental building through the new building in the front, out to the porch and the sidewalk. Okay.
Second.
Is the, trying to think about whether the negotiation with HUD is a factor or a non-factor relative to this project. It may not be a factor. We've already been through the other project there. I think it's a $60 million refurbishing, or is it?
I don't even remember the number anymore. It's a big one, yes.
No.
Mayor, it was helpful to have that discussion though tonight.
Oh, it was. All right, we got a motion and a second. Discussion. Member Bennett.
Yes, thank you. I recall a lot of discussion regarding the comprehensive plan about the differences between height and density and how we shouldn't be afraid of height. Mayor, this was one of your comments, and also a number of the planning commissioners said, don't be afraid of height, because when you put in height, it allows you to use space for green space. And that's what was done here with the original building. And now to turn around and fill that green space, it's two wonderful buildings, but this is a single site. And I can see, and there was some discussion at the Planning Commission, that by all the variances that are required to squeeze these both on the same site, there just really is not enough room. And again, the original developers did what a lot of urbanists call for, which is building the density in the height so that you can have some green space still in an urban environment. And I can't support this. I've been very thoughtful in my consideration of it, and I can't support it.
Thank you. Member Brindle, would you like to comment?
Very briefly. There were some very compelling comments made tonight. However, I am in support of this. I think the building will do a lot of what we are trying to do. And one of the challenges that we have is accommodating more people and accommodating more senior continuum. And this gives an opportunity on one site to provide that to both new residents to the area as well as residents who are currently there. And they don't have to move to another place to get it. Those services can come to them. So I actually think it's a win-win. I think that the proponents have listened carefully as we've talked about really the changes to both sites, the existing site as well as this site for Continental Gardens. So I appreciate where it's come. I think it will be a wonderful place to gather and be. So I'm in favor.
Member Sprague.
Thank you, Mayor. I too appreciate all the people that took the time tonight to come out. I can tell you personally, I know these meetings get late, so thank you for your patience as we walk through all these various issues. What I find compelling about the project is that it will add some additional community spaces for use by both populations. I look at the site plan a little differently than Member Bennett. To me, it looks like it's kind of like a jigsaw puzzle, and things have been moved around and relocated all within the same site. And in addition, there are some more organized elements, like the courtyard, that I think is a nice addition for both of those communities. I could not have supported this without a climate-controlled walkway. And I made that clear with the proponents. I think we all made that clear on sketch plan review. And so I'm glad to see that it come back with that change without guaranteeing the residents better access to York than they have today year-round. I would not have supported this project. I don't even know if there is a sidewalk. It sure doesn't. I don't recall one. I have been to the building. I've been in the meeting rooms on the first floor. I guess it's the dining room. I don't recall a sidewalk, but I have seen many seniors trying to navigate across that walkway in winter, and it looks very difficult. So again, for me, the most important element was the climate-controlled walkway, improving that quality of life issue for all the residents back in Continental Gardens. And I hope, too, I appreciate the addition of the sidewalk loop around that water feature in the back and the connection to Adams Park. And I hope that is something that gets utilized as well.
Member Swenson?
I'm sort of the piece of the puzzle person, too. I understand it's putting stuff and changing stuff that you've been used to for years, all those trees on top of that berm. I get that that doesn't feel so good. But I think it's a really good use of the space, and I think the courtyard is a great combination, and then the access. So I think it is the right thing to do, and I look forward to coming to visit you there. And then we can talk again.
This was a close call for me. But I actually think it will enhance things over time. And I think you should know, for you residents at Yorktown Continental, we're in your corner. We've approved all of the things we needed to approve relative to the refurbishing of your building, which is going to be a tremendous improvement, and we appreciate these folks being willing to make that investment in where you live, because it's a really it's a beautiful place. I was in there several years ago with Archie Givens Jr. and met with many of the residents there. Some of you may have lived there at the time. I thought Mary Brindle made a good point that what we're trying to do is accommodate more living situations for seniors, and if I thought that it was going to significantly adversely impact at all your quality of life, I wouldn't vote for it. But I'm going to support it, because I think we should go to that next phase and see what that final approval process brings. I think the conditions that Member Swenson suggested are appropriate. I am not deterred by the dwelling unit per acre number. When Yorktown was built back in the 70s, I believe, it was already at 45 units per acre at that time. Now we're at 64. And I think it speaks to our times and the high cost of land and the ability to put people in a site like this in a little bit more dense environment in an appropriate way. I think your green space, it will be less. There will be less green space, but I think it will be higher quality green space, both to the east, and that courtyard is a tremendous addition. I do also believe that the Yorktown Gardens will provide a great insulation for Yorktown Continental from the life along York Avenue, which is 30,000 vehicles a day. So I'm going to support this as well. I think it's appropriate for us to do so. So this is a final site plan review with multiple variances and preliminary plat for Mesaba Capital. We need a roll call of 3 affirmative votes to approve this matter. Clerk Mangan.
Member Swenson?
Aye.
Member Bennett?
Nay.
Member Brindle?
Aye.
Member Sprague?
Aye.
Mayor Hovland?
Aye. Thank you, folks.
Very sorry, guys. See how happy everyone here is. Thank you.
Mr. Spear, would you like to visit outside, please? We have more work to do on the agenda. Thank you. All right, the next portion of the agenda deals with community comment. Is there anyone in the audience that wishes to address a matter with the council that wasn't on the agenda this evening? Welcome.
My name is Troy Paulson. I live at 5116 Juanita Avenue. Thank you, Mayor and council members, for your service. I appreciate that. I also want to applaud you and the Parks and Rec Department on approving the $23,000 survey in the consent agenda tonight to do a survey to gauge community attitude as part of their master planning process. $23,000 sounds like a lot of money, but I support it if it allows the residents to have some influence on the master planning process for Parks and Rec. The real reason I'm here tonight is to request a survey similar to scope and size to that survey to gauge community attitude towards the proposed Living Streets plan. Council is aware that the proposed plan would dictate design standards for all new and reconstructed streets in Edina. Among other design characteristics, the plan would narrow most streets in Edina if or when they're reconstructed. Of particular interest are streets classified as local streets. That would generally be narrowed from 30 feet to 24 feet with parking limited to one side. As council is aware, engineering is currently redesigning the streets in my neighborhood to these standards, even though they haven't been approved by council. Council is also aware that 51 of 52 households in my neighborhood oppose these new standards and designs. Unless council has a better gauge of community attitude, I would respectfully request a survey to find out what that attitude is. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, Mr. Paulson. Anyone else on community comment? All right. Seeing no one coming forward, we'll move on to the reports and recommendations portion of the agenda. And the next matter in front of us is the sketch plan review for 4121 West 50th Street. And Director Teague, you have that matter.
I believe with our new format, we're going to lead off with the applicant presentation.
All right. Gentlemen, welcome.
We were doing really well on our timeline until the last public hearing, but, you know, we'll regroup, guys.
Okay.
No problem. You bet. Council members.
All right,
Mayor.
gentlemen. Yeah.
Yes.
Please introduce yourselves.
My name is Matt Duffy. I'm an attorney and I represent Drummond LLC.
Hi, and I'm Jerry O'Brien. I'm the owner of Drummond. I'm a resident of Edina, and I own the property at 4121 West 50th Street.
What we have before you tonight is a request for a planned unit development, a rezoning for that. The city staff has gotten our information, and really the proposed use description is taking what's an existing building. It was remodeled extensively in 2009 and includes 8 apartment buildings, or apartment units, excuse me, and the lower unit is actually a handicap accessible unit on the ground floor in the rear of the building. The top floor of the building, the second floor of the building was remodeled as 2 residential units, and there's a large gathering space on the second floor of the building that when the unit in the basement was remodeled to accommodate a handicap accessible unit, the office that was in that unit was moved to the second floor of the building, and that's where the office currently is for the building. It serves as a leasing office. Mr. O'Brien has an office in there from time to time, meets with new tenants, has the description in front of you. Also, his on-site assistant helps manage some of the aspects of the building. There's also 2 independent contractors that work at the building. One is for maintenance, one is for housekeeping. The idea of the proposed planned unit development here would be to repurpose that second floor into an office space to accommodate a new business venture Mr. O'Brien is engaging in. It would be institutional investing. It would be no retail traffic. It would be a very, I guess would be a low-intensity office space. Using an existing space, there would be no extensive renovations to the building that's there right now. It would use the space that's there. Some point in the future where they need to increase the space, the 2 residential units on that floor could possibly be used for that space. It would be requiring simply taking out some of the non-load bearing walls and kind of working that space into a larger gathering space. The extent of the business, as I said, it's a financial service and an institutional investment brokerage proposal, would have no retail customer traffic. I think that's important here. It would keep normal business hours, basically 7 a.m. to 7 p.m., Monday through Friday. Financial and banking institution holidays would be honored at the firm that Mr. O'Brien would run. At its height of employment, there would be 20 employees. That would be approximate.
Maximum.
Maximum, and that would be, out in the future, quite some distance. As for the parking, there was some questions and comments raised when we did this the sketch plan review in front of the Planning Commission to address the parking in the area. I think Mr. O'Brien, as in the planned unit proposed use description here, we've said that they can accommodate some parking spots on site. There's 19 to 20 existing parking spots on site, but there was some, comments to exploring other possibilities, including talking to some of the local businesses, talking to other area parking lots to see if there's some spaces for lease. And Mr. O'Brien has approached the minister at the Coventry Church across the street to talk about leasing some spaces there. There was some discussion with the U.S. Bank Lund's building a kitty corner to the building here at 4121 West 50th about leasing some spaces there. I think at this point that's not an option, but it's certainly an option to continue exploring in the future. Some other ideas that came up for potentially approaching the Hooten dry cleaning site to see if there were some spots there. And then there's been some discussions with some of the city of Edina's parking spots about buying some permits or leasing some spaces from the city of Edina to accommodate the parking at a point of future where they need to do that. As I stated, the building itself was extensionally remodeled in 2009. The units are remodeled. They're impeccably decorated, beautiful units, granite, in-unit laundry facilities, 2 bedrooms, 1.5 baths, very, very nicely redone. Great care was taken to address, energy efficiency. There's, new windows. All the walls have been insulated. Use LED lighting, and all the things to make the building a better steward of the environment were taken into account. A lot of the natural light that exists there was also accommodated quite well by the new windows and the positioning of the openings and things to accommodate the natural light there. In addition to that, the front of the building, there was a large Georgian-style porch with a balcony put out there. It's a functional balcony, and the building itself looks great. I mean, it's a dramatic change from where it was prior to the remodeling. It's turned into a very nice community amenity, a neighborhood amenity, because of the extensive remodeling the building has undergone.
T-ball field.
Oh yeah, excuse me. And then, in addition to that, another neighborhood amenity behind the building itself. There's a vacant lot that's been remodeled, or not remodeled. The lot behind the building has been used. It has been seeded and surfaced for use as a t-ball field for the neighborhood children. It's a neighborhood green space, and the idea here is that the building, if the the proposed use goes through, that vacant lot back there would continue to be used for the purposes that has been used in the past, t-ball field here. As I said, the second floor has largely been used as a community gathering space. Like I said, Mr. O'Brien and his assistant have office up there for the management of the building, and Mr. O'Brien will address that a little more detail later. But he's used it, let civic groups rent it out, book
clubs.
Donate.
Donates the space for community groups, book clubs. He's held national and local political leader or politician gathering meeting times for area residents to come in and meet their national and local representatives. So he plans on continuing to use that. Largely, the building itself has been used for short-term residential housing for people who are undergoing extensive remodeling to their homes in the area. That's just been the primary use. Primarily, what's driving that use right now is word of mouth. Mr. O'Brien's use or promotion of that has been quite successful in keeping people who want to remain in the neighborhood to monitor their own remodeling, have their kids in a neighborhood they're familiar with, be able to take their same school bus to school. That's been a really nice amenity to be able to have these people who are displaced from their own home have their own place to go to that's close by, so that things are familiar. And like I said, I think the biggest thing here is that we'll be repurposing a building that has been extensively remodeled and repurposing a space that is little used right now, given the nature of the building. The second floor residential units are not as used as much as the ones in the main floor, primarily because people want to use less stairs. That's just been the market study over the course of the history of the building. So the second floor isn't used as much as the other floors of the building. So I think the repurposing here would put a space it's not used as much into an active use and help with the economics of the building going forward. And as the city council may be aware, the building itself was scheduled to be demolished several years back before Mr. O'Brien bought it and remodeled it. So the idea here is that it took this building that was slated for demolition and a much heavier, more intense use on the spot. It was refurbished and repurposed for the use it's in now. Another, I think, really nice community amenity and the area residents is that this building, the way it's used, would be a good transitional use in the area from the commercial district on 50th Street to the residential units or residential houses that are behind it, behind the vacant lot and on Indianola Avenue. This building is situated across the street from the Coventry Church, across Indianola Avenue from the Coventry Church. And I think it would just serve as a nice transitional property for that area and the neighborhood residents and the residential homes behind it.
Mr. Duffy, I should advise you when you started that I thought we'd have you go about 15 minutes, and I'd like to hear from Mr. O'Brien too. So if you could wrap up your comments, we'll hear from Mr. O'Brien. And I think, at least I didn't take this down, did you give us your business address or your law firm name?
The name of my law firm is Monroe Moxisburg. I'm at 7760th France Avenue South.
Okay, good. Thanks.
You bet. And at this point, I'll just turn it over to Mr. O'Brien. I think he can fill in some of the details of the things.
All right, thanks, Mr. Duffy.
And if I could, for my lawyer, I think we're consistent with the comprehensive plan.
Yeah. Oh, yes. I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah. No, we see that.
Okay.
We know that.
I guess I'm here to offer color commentary. I've never done this before. I don't own any other properties. I'm not a property developer. I think that maybe it would be helpful not to assume anybody knows the story of the property, but rather to tell the story of the property. And does this work if I put this right here?
Bill.
So that's a picture taken off of Google Streets of what the property used to look like in 2006 or 2007. It's the front of the property, and also this lower part is where the T-ball field is currently. And I live about 3 blocks away in the neighborhood, and really on the bookend on 54th Street, right where the bridge needs to be revitalized. And I would drive by this on my way to work, and it did not look good, and it upset me that it didn't look good. I'd come back from work and it didn't look good, and I'd go to work and it didn't look good. And then it occurred to me, obviously, it was not working, and not to get personal, but somebody had acquired it with an eye toward a condo conversion. In fact, you can see right here kind of the whiteboard idea of what the big plan was to do a condo conversion. After I bought the mortgage, I persuaded the owner at that time to do what's called a deed in lieu of foreclosure. I said, if you just sign it over to me, I'll release your personal guarantees. and that's what we did. 3 days after doing that, the city called me, asked me if I was the owner of the property at 4121 West 50th Street. I said, well, I am recently, and I was informed that water was coming out the second floor window, and apparently the gas hadn't been paid, the taxes hadn't been paid. The pipes broke, water was coming out. And so we had to gut and redo the whole thing. And you know, I didn't really buy this with a business plan. I describe it as building a boat in my basement, no exit strategy. But you know, it was something that I felt needed to be done. And some people, I don't know if you'll appreciate this or you won't appreciate this. I've got another picture. Can you hold it for a second? These are photos of my parents' house in Detroit. And so when I saw the building, I could see in it the core, the soul of really the house I grew up in. And I needed to save this building. And so that's what I set about doing. When we were doing the gutting and the replenishing, my general contractor spoke with someone at the city, I believe the city inspector, and said, you know, there's this walkout lower level, that's the resident manager's office. If we make that wheelchair accessible, can we move the office upstairs for the rental office and also for my personal investing? And he agreed. And what was relayed to me, I wasn't there in person, but you know, I would do anything to get another wheelchair accessible unit. It has been used actually by the Jablonski family. The young man with the hockey industry injury stayed there, and that worked well. So I renovated this to really, you know, be near and dear and close to my heart. I did read the minutes from the planning commission, and somebody referred to it as transient housing, and I'm sorry, I take exception to the use of the word transient. Transitional, I'll agree, but certainly not transient. Since owning this property, I have had 158 tenants, and I have a list if you care. I've had 158 tenants stay 194 months. The average length of stay is 4 months with 3.3 people. And if you're curious, I have the roster of everybody. You'll find that they're actually Edina citizens who have lived here. I started out attempting or testing the waters for corporate housing. I found corporate relocation housing via central purchasing, typically in Dallas, to be very dissatisfying. And I found this word of mouth and my friends and neighbors who think they need 3 months and they wind up needing 6 months to get their construction done to be very gratifying. So that's kind of the story of the property.
Good. So what we're going to do is we're going to go from council member to council member. We're going to have each council member give their comments, what they have concerns about, what they like,
Sure.
and that hopefully give you some guidance.
Thank you.
Before we start, can we please get some clarification from Attorney Maddock as to whether there is a difference in zoning between housing that is occupied according to some kind of lease? Is there a difference between short-term, not hotel obviously, but something that's designed and used for short-term stays as opposed to longer-term stays of 6 months to a year or more?
Not that I'm aware of, no. You
Okay.
design it the same, and I'm not aware that your code distinguishes between the two.
And there's no regular difference in state law in terms of licensing or any kind of other
No,
requirement?
not that I'm aware of, no.
Thank you.
All right. Member Sprague, you want to start?
What's the current parking for the
19.
Yeah, 19.
Yep.
I was looking at the site again, and I'm curious how that lays out because it looks really tight with the entrance and egress. So are those marked spots?
They are not marked spots. There are 9 interior spots.
Okay.
And so that's the bulk of them. Well, not the bulk of them. There are 9 interior, and then there's. Can you see? This is from. I think it's from the tax lead. And then there's parallel parking right here, and 2 parking spots there. The other thing, you know, the apartment building was built in the 1950s when people either had 1 car or no car, and now people tend to have 2 cars and sometimes 3 cars. And the way we coordinate that is when people rent a stall, they control the space directly behind their stall on the surface. And so they kind of do a tandem, 1 interior and tandem with the same tenant directly behind it. So that's how we get.
So you said that you projected 20 employees.
That would be an extremely high-end estimate. Yeah.
And how would they be parked
Yeah, parking is absolutely the critical factor here, no doubt about it. One of the questions or ideas, there's multiple ideas that Matt ran through. It is possible, we own this lot. I could take 10%, less than 10% actually, of this lot and put 6 angle parking right here. Alternatively, the Coventry Church, I talked with the minister. He currently leases 2 spots to Steel Fitness, and he is open to it, although he was quite clear he needs to go to his council, but he said he would be happy to take it to council if we want to rent there. Other options, of course, we talked to U.S. Bank across the street and Lund's, and that was for good order's sake. I know it's crowded over there, and they kind of snickered at us. There could also be parking possibly behind Hooten Cleaners is open. I have not had a conversation there yet. And then, of course, there's the city lot right next to Hooten Cleaners where, we would be as eligible as anybody to rent a space if necessary.
So parking is one issue. For me, the use, I guess you called it a transition, but I already thought that dense building on the corner was a transition from the single-family residential over. And I recall we looked at a proposal to intensify it as a residential use across the street, and there was some issue about intensifying into this residential neighborhood. And with the office use, that would be my same concern. That was echoed at planning as well. So the use, the parking, and I think the other part of this is going to be coming forward. When you go to PUD, there are certain benefits that the applicant wants to speak to, whether it's sustainability, affordable housing, pedestrian streetscape, and so on. And I don't see any of that information in the narrative, but that would be an important consideration for making this type of land use change. So, and I know that was mentioned as well in planning. So those are my comments.
Thank you.
Member Swenson.
For me, between all the years on planning and then the years on council, it's important that this is a housing strip, and I think the parking tells you that that's why. We don't have a lot of extra parking up there. As a matter of fact, we've got $1 million and some dollar improvements going on, and we're going to have to build onto the ramp. So I do appreciate what you did to the building, though. I'd like to tell you that. I really do. And I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I would not be supportive of this.
Member Bennett?
I may be the only council member who's toured the building. I was there on Parade of Homes. It was so new, the renovations, that we had to walk on boards across mud to get in. And it is a beautiful renovation. And I was struck at the time, I still remember most of the details. I remember that the lower level has the parking and then a workout room, exercise facility.
Yeah.
And then the person who was giving us the tour told us that this other space was used for family gathering and that the handicapped accessible unit was used for visiting family members, and that it had more convenience and accessibility than most hotels offered. And then there were units still in transition on that first floor, I guess second floor above that ground level. And then I did note the existence of pretty generous, well-appointed office space on the third floor and wondered what it was going to be used for.
Yeah.
So I'm concerned about the creeping out of a really intense commercial area at 50th and France, commercial creep, which was a term that was used at the Planning Commission. It's a very, very busy area, and I found some reference, particularly in the revised narrative, to the neighborhood to the South Harriet Park, Arden Park, but I didn't see acknowledgement or reference to the residential neighborhood along 50th Street, which it becomes once it gets west of Halifax and west, and starting with the homes on the north, rounding to Maple Road, and then going west. So it's one of those interesting kind of mixed characteristic streets, but it is residential going west. And so that's a big concern. Also, again, residential to the north. So really, it's not a blurred line in most places. And so the use is a concern to me. I guess the parking is kind of incidental to the use, because with the residential, understanding that there's some challenges with the building. But the issues that I think are here more flow from what is the building intended to be, and beautiful residential building surrounded by residential neighborhoods with that commercial area to the east. And that's what I would prefer to see continue.
Member Brindle?
Thank you. You know, the overarching idea that sticks with me is that this is a potential area of change, and the possibility that in the future the uses could change in these border properties, but we're not there, and I'm also not supporting. I can't support this at this point. If this is a mixed-use building, I would need to see a different entrance for commercial than residential. This is very obviously a lovely residential building, which I hope can be rented for long-term leases for people who will enjoy living near 50th and France, for all it has to offer, and all it has to offer, and as well some very well-appointed apartments. But it does not accommodate a growing business. And I'm sensitive to the fact that you own this building and you're trying to come up with a way to use it that is going to make sense. But I'm struggling with how that is going to work in the whole scheme of you've stepped beyond the transition of the Henley into residential. And so to reintroduce commercial seems like it seems wrong to me. So that's where I am.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, it was a beautiful, beautiful renovation, and I have also been in there, and I think I've seen most of the units that weren't occupied at one time or another. Interesting comment, I think, by Member Brindle about separating commercial from residential use, figuring out a way to do that may be a little bit difficult. I'm usually pretty progressive on things, and I understand the comprehensive plan would allow this mix of uses, office space and residential, but I really like the way it is now. You have your office on the second floor.
Yeah.
And when I think about that second floor being renovated and used entirely for office space, it gives me some element of discomfort. I can't tell you exactly why. Parking is an issue, I think. I was thinking of, as other members were talking on the council, there's a bank over off 65th and Valley View that looks like it has a generous amount of parking space right on the crosstown there, right west of Twin Cities Orthopedics. Mm-hmm. And they've got, I think the council imposed on them a few years ago, a limited amount of parking. You know, they can't do what your residents do, and as a consequence, it has limited the amount of the volume of tenancy, I guess is one way to put it, over there. I think we'd have the same kind of problem over at your building, at Little Mount Vernon over there on 50th. From you having your office on the second floor, I can see where those mix of uses work just fine. Mm-hmm. And the people that I've met that have lived there on a temporary basis also think it works just fine. But there's something disconcerting about expanding that whole second floor to an entire business operation that gives me pause. And that's all I can tell you right now. It's purely subjective. It's just visceral. And because I've seen it work on a smaller scale, I just have reservations about it working on a larger scale. So I hope that's helpful for you some way, somehow. And
I think it's probably abbreviating. I don't know if it's helpful, but I do
Yeah.
appreciate the abbreviation because it can be expensive to try to push a will.
Okay.
all right.
Thanks for
Thanks.
coming in.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Mr. Duffy. All right. We've got an appointment to the Edina Community Health Commission to deal with.
Second.
We got a motion and a second to appoint Kathy Kozad to the vacancy on the Community Health Commission for the term ending March 1, 2016. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. 8C is off the agenda, and we've got a resolution accepting
move the
various grants and
donations.
donations. The motion and a second. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Donations this reporting period: Braemar Golf Course for future golf course equipment purchases, Edina Arts Center, and then the Edina Park and Rec. Some very nice gifts into the Park and Rec from the Community Foundation on behalf of the Donald Nyrop Memorial Fund for $5,000 and $1,700 in value from Fairview Hospitals and Clinics, and then some other wonderful donations as well. They will all be posted on the website. Correspondence and petitions. I assume there is nothing other than what was on the dais. Member Bennett.
If I might, I do have a question or comment about one of the pieces of correspondence. We received from Richard Johnson on Tucker Lane a letter, actually, that the mayor had put in the packet about now it might be time to provide an article in About Town with the rights and obligations of car drivers and bicyclists or bikers. And I had the opportunity in the last few days to see such a piece that had been written by several Transportation Commission members that was really informative as to the rights and responsibilities of motorists, rights and responsibilities of bicyclists, and rights and responsibilities of pedestrians. And I'm wondering if that could not be adapted and used to respond to this. It seemed pretty complete.
We are actually working on a complete program that addresses all use and kind of a respect for the road sort of message. It will be going to the ETC for review and comment, and then coming back to staff, and hopefully we'll get to something that we all like. But we're in the midst of preparation of such a document right now.
Great.
And a campaign.
Thank you.
All right.
Mayor?
All right.
We also have a advisory communication from the ETC related to revising our code to allow for new generation services like Uber and Lyft. And I'm wondering if we can move this along to get some ordinance revisions back to us at some point as well. So I'll move that.
I'll second.
Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried.
Thank you, Mayor.
All right. Aviation noise update. Member Bennett.
Thank you. There was a noise oversight committee meeting the day after our last council meeting, and then a public input meeting last Tuesday evening. Not a lot of note at the noise oversight committee meeting, except that there was a very good explanation of what technology can and cannot do. And one of the very big takeaways from that meeting is that newer technology will be able to fly a narrower path. So when newer
A
technology,
narrower path doesn't talk less noise, it just talks about concentrating it in a much more specific line, correct?
although Member Swenson, as you and I heard in
Yes.
Seattle last November,
planes.
most of the new technology is in
Outside
fact
as well.
associated with quieter. I think part of what our residents are experiencing right now is about half of the flights out of MSP are regional jets.
Yeah.
And these are not the smaller regional jets that we've been used to of 30 and 50 passengers. These are 100 passenger regional jets, and they are fully loaded.
Yep. And they're louder.
I believe that that is what people are experiencing, and they're lower. A lot of times they're lower. Following the Noise Oversight Committee meeting, Manager Neal and I met with John Nelson and Dana Nelson of the MAC staff to discuss the placement of the temporary RMTs in our community. And we engaged in a very, I think, very productive discussion that started at one logical point and progressed. First of all, we looked at where the noise is, where the flights are concentrating over the community. We overlaid a flight density map over city map. And that narrowed it to 3 quadrants: northeast, southeast, and southwest. We are hearing more reports from our residents in the northwest quadrant, but the flight density is not what it is in those other 3 quadrants. Because the northeast quadrant is adjacent to Minneapolis, which has noise monitoring equipment, and also adjacent to the city of St. Louis Park, which will be having a temporary RMT during the same period that Edina will, we decided, the group of us, to focus on the southeast and southwest quadrants. The equipment needs to be on property that is accessible, that is secure, and that is relatively free from conflicting noises such as freeways and big construction projects such as Fairview Southdale Hospital, which also serve to rule out the edge of the northeast quadrant that is along the Crosstown Highway 62. So then we focused on the southeast and southwest quadrants. The equipment is very weather resistant, but it is not resistant to vandalism. The exact locations of the equipment will be revealed when we receive a report from the MAC after the monitoring is complete. The monitoring will take place in October. In St. Louis Park, it will be measuring noise from arriving flights, and this will serve as a baseline for RNAV for arriving flights, which will be implemented on or after March 5 of 2015. So we now have a date on that. At one point, it was going to be fall of 14 or spring of 15, and the latest information from John Nelson at the MAC is that on or after March 5. Again, the tower or the temporary equipment in St. Louis Park will measure arriving flights. The 2 locations in Edina will measure departing flights. We are going to ask that there be some correlation with flight density for 3 to 5 years prior to the monitoring period. Our public safety departments have looked at the sites and determined that they're feasible from our standpoint, so we've done the vetting we need to do, and we will be getting back to the MAC to affirm that they can be located as was decided.
So what I hear you say is that you have asked that they not change the departure schedule for the 2 weeks that they are monitoring their noise.
Since the FAA determines the flight patterns.
Right, which we learned when we went there on...
Right, what we're asking instead for is data information that will allow us to know how close to previous year's experience.
To verify what had been the existing condition and then what occurred during that.
Right, how close to existing condition. And also, flights slightly down for this year, but night flights up. At the public input meeting in Mendota Heights last week, that was a big topic of discussion by people, residents from Mendota Heights, from Eagan, and from Bloomington, who appeared to speak. There was one Edina resident in a neighborhood adjacent to the east of Highway 100, southeast quadrant, and also one resident of Minneapolis who spoke. There were 12 people who spoke, about 30 in attendance. So one of my takeaways from that meeting, and I've heard this at other meetings as well, is this really is a Twin Cities-wide issue. It's not to diminish or minimize at all the discomfort that our residents are experiencing, but this is something that's experienced throughout the metro. And to a piece of correspondence that received today, the points that I've taken away from it, first of all, again, RNAV for departures not being discussed at this time. We will keep people absolutely as informed as possible about discussions regarding that. And in fact, nationally, we are part of an effort that is asking for implementation to be very mindful of local conditions and not on a one-size-fits-all basis. We are also asking for studies on the health impacts of concentrated noise, which would be related to this, and in addition, a fuller environmental study of aviation impacts, including emissions as well as noise. But we want to, I think, remind our residents that a lot of these issues are really going to be impacted at a state and federal level. They do want to keep in communication with their representatives in St. Paul and in Washington. They can catch them when they're home this summer from Washington and make sure that they understand what the issue is, how it's affecting them personally, and what they would like to see for changes and improvements going forward.
Thank you. Manager Neal, anything to add?
Nothing to add.
All right. Member Brindle, council comments.
I have nothing tonight.
Sorry, Mary.
If you get some notes you want
No.
someone else to read,
Didn't
all right.
even write a, no.
Member Bennett.
I'm good, thank you.
Member Swenson.
I'm good too.
We're joining in with, commiserating with Member Brindle. Member Sprague has a couple of things.
You're going to ruin the roll?
I'm going to ruin the roll tonight. I'm so sorry, but I will be brief. I noticed that the Planning Commission has been working on a conflict of interest policy, and there were some comments in the record. They were looking at the City of Brainerd policy, and it occurred to me that really we should be looking at drafting a citywide policy. I know that there is some confusion in the broader community about what a conflict of interest is. We have the statute, but we don't have a city-wide policy that would apply not only to the council, but to all boards and commissions. So I want to move that we have city staff prepare a draft of a conflict of interest policy that would apply citywide and bring it back to us maybe at the next meeting if that's a possibility.
It's a pretty short time span. Next meeting 2 weeks from now?
Mr. Neal, do you want to respond to the timeline?
No, I think that there's an example. The City of Brainerd policy is based on the League of Minnesota Cities model policy. If council...
I've read the Brainerd one.
Yeah, if council can allow us to use that as a basis, we can have something ready for you to look at in 2 weeks.
I'll second that.
Could we look at the league model policy as well?
Oh, certainly. We'll include that as part of the...
That'd be great.
It's a much larger body of work. Some of it's very subjective, so you'll see kind of how Brainerd transitioned down. It's a good thing to look at it for context. I agree.
All right.
Yeah.
Get a motion in a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried.
That's it, Mayor.
All right, good. Just one quick comment. I got a letter from the League of Minnesota Cities asking me to tell our council and our residents that they had determined that Ron Earhart was one of the outstanding legislators of the year last session, and asked me to pass that on to the council as well as our fellow citizens. So, manager's comments.
Actually, I want to defer back to Councilmember Brindle for just a moment because she's thought of something very important.
Oh, Manager Neal reminded me. This Sunday, August 10th, is the annual Torchlight concert for Sousa Band, and it really is something. Last year there were 4,500 people there.
And you're at the Metzel?
We are at Centennial Lakes at the amphitheater, and starting around 6, it's ice cream and balloons and Model Ts and Model As and penny farthing bicycles with the Minnesota Wheelmen, one of whom starred in an Oscar-winning or Emmy-winning commercial for the city of Edina.
Okay.
And with Donna Tilsner. But festivities start at 6, concert starts at 8:30. One of the features is the Model Boat Club out there with all their boats lit up for the evening. So it's a great time. So.
Well, we're hoping that you'll be in good enough shape to play that French horn of yours.
Well, I can play. I just can't talk.
All right. Manager Neal.
Thank you, Your Honor. I've got 3 short things. One is again something that's going to occur Centennial Lakes Park, and that is the dedication of the new rotary clock. And that's going to happen on Tuesday the 12th at 5:30. It's if you haven't seen it
Beautiful.
yet, take a look at it.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful. Second is that the mayor and I today were part of the inaugural board of directors meeting of Explore Edina, the new Convention and Visitors Bureau. It is off and running. And the last thing is, earlier this evening, as part of the consent agenda, you approved the purchase of something called a Real Ice gadget. And this gadget is important because of what it does, but it also, I think, is important for what it tells you. And that is that the staff at Braemar Arena is constantly trying to look at its cost structure, what it spends money on, and we spend a lot of money on energy at Braemar Arena. And this device is going to allow us to change the chemistry of our water so that we don't have to heat it. It's kind of counterintuitive, but we freeze hot water because it creates a better quality ice. If you can create the same kind of chemical qualities in that water without having to heat it, you save on gas, and then you also save on electricity because you don't have to run you don't have to pay the gas bill to heat the water in the first place, and you save on electricity because you don't have to run the compressors to keep the ice frozen as long. So this device is going to have an ROI of less than a year, we believe, and at 2 years at max. So
And better ice.
And better ice. Something else that they're also looking at is looking at the depth of our ice. So if we previously had 4 or 5 inches of ice, they're looking at can you do just as good a quality of ice with 3 or 2 or maybe even 1.5 inches. Again, if you have less ice that you have to keep frozen, you can spend less on energy at the ice arena. So they're doing some good stuff out there, and not just building more things and physical improvements, but how they operate the place. And I want you to know they're doing that because they think it's important for them to run a good ship. And that's all I got for you.
Good. Thank you. Anything else? Member Bennett?
It is night to night tomorrow night, which is why we're meeting a night early. And is there a place on the city website that people can go to find out about a gathering in their neighborhood? I know there are over 50 planned.
Yeah, Roslyn Park tomorrow night from 6 to 8. The police department will be hosting their own night-to-night party for those who aren't involved in a neighborhood party. So they'll be having snacks and treats and officers, and I think a K-9 officer will be out there and the fire department too.
Great. And there are over 50 events in the neighborhoods as well. So
yeah, I think we have 54 parties scheduled. So
Great.
neighborhood parties.
Great, thank you.
All right, good. If there's nothing further, we will adjourn the council meeting and call the HRA meeting to order. Council meeting is adjourned. Calling to order the Edina Housing and Redevelopment Authority. Call to order, please. Clerk Mangan.
Commissioner Bennett?
Here.
Commissioner Brindle?
Here.
Commissioner Sprague?
Here.
Commissioner Swenson?
Here.
Chair Havlin?
Here.
I move approval of the meeting agenda.
Second.
A motion and a second to approve the meeting agenda. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. Is there a motion to approve the minutes of the HRA?
Second.
Motion and second to approve the HRA minutes of June 17, 2014. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed say nay. Carried. One action item. Request for purchase award bid mirrors what we did on at the council level. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion and a second to award bid on the France Avenue and Hazelton Road landscaping to Hoffman and McNamara Company. Further discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed say nay. Carried. Any further business for the HRA?
Could we look at the time?
It's 10:40.
Could we notice what it says for the
I
adjournment
believe it
time?
says 10:40.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. We stand adjourned at 10:40.
Well done, council. Well done.